Alright, here we are another night where there's nowhere to go, nothing to do, and no one to look up to. All the great podcast themes have been turned into podcast theme parks, and I don't know about you, but...
Hello, baby, I've been waiting for a Christian Slater podcast.
Welcome back to the Christian Slater Monitor. I'm your host, Oswald Ramirez. You can call me Ozzy, and I'm here with...
Reno, Carson.
Huzzah! This is our second requested episode, and I will remind you, I do read all your letters. Please keep sending them to Hollywood, California, 06990 Roman Polanski Way, care of my daughter Harley. I tried to book Dr. Ruth for this episode, but I couldn't, because we're going to be talking about 2013's Nymphomaniacs Volume 1 and 2. When did you become aware of this movie? When did you first see it? You'd seen it before.
I'm a huge Lars von Trier fan. Someone told me that you referred to Lars von Trier's movies as like Euro harsher movies.
Yes.
Like, back in my mind. That makes me laugh. But yeah, I'm a big Lars von Trier fan. So I saw it when it came out. In 2013.
I am, not. I hadn't seen one of his movies since, I think, Manderley.
Wow, okay.
And I think I'd started Antichrist, or one of them, maybe not Antichrist, and Melancholia, and neither of them seemed too bad, but I didn't stick with them. I just saw the first few minutes, was like, I'll come back to this, and never did. And I think I was curious about Nymphomaniac, maybe because Christian Slater was in it when it came out, then it came and went, and I just forgot it existed.
I'm not a huge fan of Antichrist. I don't love Antichrist. Melancholia is it's one of my dad's favorite movies, actually. And I know a bunch of men who really love Melancholia. It seems to be a man's movie, a movie that men in my life really enjoy.
It stars that guy that is so dreamy. What's his name? He's the guy in this movie, Stellan Skarsgård's son, right?
Yeah.
Alexander Skarsgård. I had an ex-girlfriend who just thought he was the hottest guy on earth.
He's on Succession right now, and he was in Big Little Lies and stuff.
He was on True Blood. She loved True Blood.
But yeah, I feel okay about Melancholia. I really like his older stuff. I like Dogville.
That's the only one of his movies I liked is Dogville. I saw it at the theater with a buddy of mine, you may have met, named Ramirez, and we both just kept cracking up. We thought it was really good.
I don't know if I have met Ramirez. That doesn't sound too familiar to me, but maybe it's possible.
This was actually recommended by our buddy Boz. Boz Gravidson.
Yeah, he's the one that told me that you referred to Lars von Trier's movies as Euro harsher movies.
Yeah, he really likes this one. He said it was maybe his favorite Lars von Trier movie.
I am a big fan, yeah. I don't like Volume 2 as much, but I do like Volume 1 quite a lot.
Before we get into it, I guess there is a lot of old business. We theorized a lot on Wes Bentley's sobriety when we watched Dolan's Cadillac. It turns out he checked into rehab citing major drug and alcohol problems just after filming of it wrapped. So we were right.
I could not stop laughing when I watched that episode about Dolan's Cadillac.
It was so crazy.
I would have never thought that you look like Wes Bentley, but then the photo that you put up of Wes Bentley, with your head shaved, you really did look like Wes Bentley.
Well, Amit, the co-host, he said it when I first came up on the Zoom call. He's like, "Did you do this on purpose to look like Wes Bentley?"
Yeah, that was a good episode. I really enjoyed that one. I haven't watched the True Romance one yet, or the other one with my old roommate.
And also in the Gleaming the Cube one, I corrected the Hard Rain one, saying that Richard Dicehart was really Richard Basehart. It turns out it was really Richard Dicehart. They're two different guys. Hollywood magic. Also, I said so that we don't see Christian Slater skate in the empty pool in Gleaming the Cube, and we totally did. And I couldn't remember what kind of sandwich he had, and it was a turkey sandwich.
Did you say that in Gleaming the Cube, that you don't see him skate in the pool?
I thought I did, and then when I was watching it and editing it, I didn't remember seeing me say that. So maybe I didn't say that.
Yeah, I don't remember that, but I couldn't say. I haven't watched it in a while, but...
And I polled a skater girl and my cousin, the skater, about whether they had ever gleamed the cube. And she had no idea what I was talking about. And he said that he's seen the movie many times and still is not sure what they're talking about when they say it. And so they must be really shitty skaters.
Yeah, true. I don't think that's a thing. I've never heard of it. I've never heard of it.
Me neither.
But I don't know. Maybe we're all just
And speaking of skating, last episode, Hunter, he said that Rick Dokuman was in Little Monsters with Fred Savage, and I kind of missed it because I didn't understand what he said, honestly. And Rick Dokuman and his brother he died, so his brother owns a still existent skateboard company called Skull Skates. Some kind of synergy there.
Is the Fred Savage movie like also a skate thing, or is that?
Well, he does actually. Fred Savage does skate in it. He is a skateboarder in The Wizard.
I know Hunter's a big Fred Savage guy.
And I forgot to mention, though, when we talked about The Wizard, it's a video game movie. I'm not that good at video games, but I once did get high score in a porno arcade.
Ooh.
Christian Slater from Interview with the Vampire, he turned down, apparently, the Jonathan Harker role in Bram Stoker's Dracula. I saw in an interview. Because at the time, he had a big ego, and he'd already worked with Francis Ford Coppola on Tucker, A Man in His Dream, and he was offended that he was not offered the role of Dracula.
I'm sure he probably regrets that.
Yeah, he was. There was him talking about a regret.
Yeah.
Have you seen that movie, Bram Stoker's Dracula?
I don't think so. We talked about this, but I kind of hate vampires.
Well, I like that movie, but he was replaced by Keanu Reeves, ended up taking the role, and Keanu Reeves' performance as Harker is like a legendarily, hilariously bad performance. It's kind of famously bad because he tries to do a British accent, and it's very not good.
Ooh, well, that's a parallel with today's film, because I feel like he's doing a not good British accent.
It's a weird voice he's doing. I thought maybe they had distorted his voice in post. He doesn't sound like in any other movie.
Yeah, he's kind of doing a weird British accent in this one. So is Shia LaBeouf, or however.
Yeah, and in fact, I was confused by the movie because I didn't think he was even doing British. I thought he was doing some weird, unplaceable Euro accent or something, and with Stellan Skarsgård in it. I wasn't sure what country the movie was supposed to take place, and I made a note to ask you after the first viewing I had of it. Then I watched it again and made more notes and on the plot, and I realized it has to be England because everybody's doing English accents except for Stellan Skarsgård and maybe Christian Slater.
Yeah, I feel like everyone's doing a kind of British accent in it. But yeah, I don't think there's, most of the people, I guess, have British accents, but not everyone. Kind of reminds me of Last Temptation of Christ or something in that way. Everyone just everyone's accent is kind of all over the place.
Well, they had a system there, though. All of the Romans are English accents, are British accents, and all of the Jews are American, or New Yorkers and shit.
Yeah, so in this movie you have a bunch of, I guess this is not as much of a system, but you have American accents, British accents, whatever Stellan Skarsgård is. I don't know, he's Swedish or something.
One cool one was they did that movie Alexander, Oliver Stone's Alexander, which people think is terrible, but if they're willing to go maybe on Netflix now and watch a cut that was made 10 years after the movie came out, almost 8 years or something, in 2012 or something. Maybe even later, they made yet another cut of that movie called the Final Cut, or no, I think it's called Ultimate Cut or something. And I think that it's really good. And all of Alexander and his Greek buddies, they gave them all Irish accents. And if you notice, Jared Leto and Val Kilmer are even doing Irish accents in it, and they're pretty good. I think everybody, I'm not Irish, so maybe they suck, but when I was watching this one, I was I think A, this movie's pretty damn good, and B, I think Jared Leto and Val Kilmer are pretty good.
I really want to say some things about Jared Leto, but
Well, I watched the trailer. I saw a trailer for this movie's coming out in Morbius, and I gotta say, what a fat ass. Guy needs to lose some weight.
And he's the one guy who I'm how has he not been Me Too'd? There's been rumors about him for it's most of the people who have been Me Too'd, you heard all the rumors about them. I remember hearing rumors about them, Harvey Weinstein, Kevin Spacey, Jared Leto is one of those people you've heard crazy ass rumors about for a million years. And how has he not been Me Too is the question.
Yeah, I heard from a guy like that Anthony Rapp had been dining out on his Kevin Spacey story for like 20 years before it came out in the press.
Yeah, I mean, like, I remember hearing stories about him way back in the day, too. Everyone that had been Me Too, like, you heard stories about it in the day. And, like, I remember hearing stories about Jared Leto for, like, 20 years. And, like,
I don't hear any stories about anything, but I remember, like, when, James Toback got Me Too'd, I was like, oh, yeah, all of his, like, movies are about being pervy or, like, just being a creep. And then, like, the one, what's-his-face, the comedian that was exposing himself to women, it's Louis C.K. It's like, he's a very popular stand-up comedian, and I always watch his stand-up comedy, or not always, but I watch his stand-up comedy, and I'm like, I don't relate to this. He's always talking about showing his penis to another dude, or buying a prostitute. I was like, he's like too far out there for me. So when he got busted, I was like, yeah, see, he's a creep.
I mean, Fred Armisen's like the other one, where you're like, those are the
really?
two people, but like, yeah, where you're like, how are they like, I don't know.
Not in trouble? Well, the opposite is Christian Slater, the same guy that told me about the Anthony Rapp thing. He knows Christian Slater, worked on a couple of movies with him, and he says Christian Slater is like the nicest guy. And some of the when he worked with him on the first movie, it would have been like when Christian Slater was pretty drugged out and stuff and in trouble. But he's like, no, he's really sweet. He's been to dinner at my house. He's just like the nicest dude.
Nice. So it's good that we chose him.
Yes, and not the Jared Leto show.
I'm just saying allegedly.
Allegedly. Yeah, we have no facts.
No facts here. I'm just hearsay.
Also, we joked about the guy having 2 phones in his room and gleaming the cube. He had at least 4 phones in his room that I saw when I was looking at it to draw things, when I was just looking at the movie again.
I want like all the drawings from this podcast. I want to hang them all in my office.
I think maybe his thing was that people would call him for the Pizza Hut line. I don't know, but he had 4 phones on that table at least.
Gleaming Cube was great. That's like my favorite one.
That's my favorite episode so far of the show. And also, Elston Gunn, he was talking about Chuck Klosterman essays with Val Kilmer and the True Romance one. And I listened to a podcast of Chuck Klosterman talking with Bill Simmons about that new Beatles documentary. And I was kind of noting it because I just listened to Elston Gunn talking about that book. And he didn't seem that on the ball, but he made fun of a book that I guess Malcolm Gladwell's coming out with a book, or has a book, where he says Paul Simon is the greatest American songwriter because he's written great songs over such a long period of years. And Chuck Klosterman was like, well, that's kind of ridiculous because in music, it's kind of more impressive to people when somebody can do a lot of stuff in like a really short amount of time. It's not like it's sports where it's being able to stay at the top of your game forever is like the big thing. But, it's obviously good.
Some of my honestly favorite essays about music. Like, he wrote one about country music that I really love because like he says this thing about country music that like really has stuck in my mind for like years and years and years. Like, I don't remember which one of these books of his essays this was in. It might be like Sex, Drugs, and Cocoa Puffs or something. But he wrote this essay about country music where he talks about how like country music is the most popular American music because it's like easy to understand. And he's not just easy to understand thematically, like my girl and my dog and like
my buddy or my cousin, the same cousin, he was telling me the same thing, is that it's not like Purple Haze or something.
Yeah.
It's like it actually tells you about something real.
Yeah. He's like, it's literally lyrically easy to understand. Like, you can literally understand what the people are saying, and it's like thematically easy to understand.
I agree.
But yeah, I'm a fan.
However, I would say the Malcolm Gladwell thing is ridiculous for a different reason. If he thinks that Paul Simon's been writing the best, like, great songs over the longest period of time, it's like, when was the last Paul Simon song released that you actually listen to now?
Yeah, I don't even know any Paul Simon songs.
I like Paul Simon, but I don't think he's had one since the mid-'80s that I listened to.
Like, I only know, like, a few, like, Simon and Garfunkel songs, and, like, I can't even think of one Paul Simon song except, what is that one song? Like, it's like the one famous song that he has that's like a solo song.
He has a ton of famous solo songs.
But there's like one that I'm thinking of.
Call Me Al.
No.
50 Ways to Leave Your Lover.
No, okay.
Still Crazy After All These Years. Slip Sliding Away. Gosh, Graceland. Diamonds on the Soles of Her Shoes. He has a lot. Late in the Evening. He had a lot of solo hits in the 70s and 80s. But I'm thinking like none that are really memorable since like 1980. Obvious Child since like 86 or 87. Oh, Me and Julio Down by the Schoolyard.
I don't know this. Oh, I don't know. I can't even think of. I don't even know what it's called. So I'm not even sure. It could be like any of these songs. I can think of I can like think of how it goes in my head. But like, yeah, I don't even know like most of his like solo songs or something. I don't even know. Yeah, like I don't know how you would think that he's like the best solo artist.
Yeah, and however, like it's like, but I listened to Bob Dylan songs from like the year 2000. So
yeah, I've never been that big a Bob Dylan fan.
He's my favorite.
But I like Bob Dylan, don't get me wrong. But it's like one of those things where, you know, when you listen to stuff when you're young, like Bob Dylan, or even for me, like my favorite band my whole life was like the Jesus and Mary Chain. And it's like, I can't even listen to them anymore as an adult, just because like, well, I think I tell this story and I don't know if I've told it on this podcast or not, but I went to see them like when I was in my 20s or something. And it was so sad. Like, it was so fucking sad. It was like the saddest thing I've ever seen. And like,
Were they bad?
It was so bad. And like, you could tell they like didn't, there was like a time when like Jim Reed in the show was like, we're doing the best we can. Like, it was so fucking sad. And I was just like, ugh, like, it was so like heartbreaking or something. And I was like, people say like, yeah, like never meet your idols or something. It was like one of those things I was like, I should never have gone to the show. It was when they like reunited that year that they played South by Southwest, and it was so sad. And like, I don't know, like, but it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, when you listen to like Led Zeppelin or Pink Floyd or like Bob Dylan so much as a younger person, that when you get older, you're just like, I can't listen to this anymore.
Are you ready to get into the movie Nymphomaniac?
I am. Yeah, let's do it.
Episode X. All right, so in part one, I thought I was watching the director's cut, but I realized I wasn't at some point because I think like the version I was seeing was 30 minutes too short or something.
The first time I watched it, I watched the director's cut, and this time I did not watch the director's cut.
On rewatch, I realized too that at the beginning, like in a foreign language, it told me that it wasn't the director's cut, but I wasn't able to read the language. I think it was in Italian or something. And then I was like, oh, I see what they're saying here. They're telling me that Lars von Trier didn't work on this version. It was intended to be released as one movie. It was made as one movie. I think maybe well before they ever maybe even finished production or started production, they realized they were going to have to put it out as two. But it was conceived to be one, so that's why I wanted to handle it as one movie.
Yeah, the first time I watched it, I watched the director's cut, which I feel like was literally like 5 hours long.
Oh, I'm sure it was, because I think that together the two I watched, because I watched the director's cut of Volume 2, and that was 3.5 hours long. And I think that the non-director's cut of Part 1 was like 1:49 or something. So I'm sure it was like 5.5 hours. Yeah, it was more than 5 hours, I imagine, because it was more than 5 hours to watch the two I watched.
Yeah, it's long.
Begin spoilers.
So the movie opens with the title, and then over a minute of black screen. Why the black screen? Is it a thing to make sure that my mind is cleared and I'm ready for art films? To be fancy? You shut out all the things you have going on and focus on this work of art?
I guess so. But I love...
Pretty sure I know how to watch a movie.
I love this thing that Lars von Trier does. Like, I have to say, he does it in this movie and in Antichrist, where, like, you know, I love this, like, really on-the-nose, like, music choices that he makes. I love the fucking, like, Rammstein music.
Oh, is that... See, I thought it was Rammstein and then never looked up what it was, so it was Rammstein.
I mean, I actually don't know that for sure, but it must
Did you think it was Rammstein? Apparently, yes.
Yeah.
So then we go into a snowy Euro alley, which I guess is England. And it's funny, you can like immediately tell it's not an American alley. And then we see the sound of melting snow dripping on, and then we hear the sound of melting snow dripping on a metal trash can. And then we see the motionless, possibly lifeless body of a bloody female hand. And then we cut to Stellan Skarsgård in a book-filled apartment. And he puts on a scarf and goes to market. And he buys groceries in a net food bag. And he sees a woman in the alley on his way home. And it's Charlotte Gainsbourg. And he wakes her. And he wants to call an ambulance. And she says no, she doesn't want one. She says not to call the police either. She just asks for a cup of tea and some milk.
What do you think about Charlotte Gainsbourg, by the way?
This was maybe the first movie I'd seen her in all the way through, because I'd seen the beginning of those other two movies. I don't think I've seen her in anything else except for the lemon incest video. And I think she stinks. I don't think she's a good actor based on what I've seen on this movie. Like, I remember when they switched to when the younger girl becomes her in part 2, I was really bummed. I was like, couldn't they just have used Irishman effects? And
yeah, I actually agree with you. I don't necessarily feel like she's a bad actress per se, but I prefer the other actress.
I certainly did. I mean, I don't know if she's always bad, but in this, well, I don't know. See, the truth be told, I watched like 20 minutes of Antichrist after this and was like, you know what? No one's paying me to do this or forcing me. I'm not going to finish this movie. And I thought she was really bad in that too.
I don't really have any feelings about her as an actress per se, but I just wondered if you found her attractive.
Oh, no, I don't. I could see how, like, she's a good, like, she might be like one of those people that's like attractive in real life, but isn't attractive for the movies. And like, you know, as far as like compared to other movie actors, but even in this movie, I was not attracted to her now. But she's also, you know, she's not like, supposed to be like young and beautiful. She's older than us in it, older than me. I'm older than you. Mm-hmm. But also, like, she reminded me of, I would watch this show with a girl that I was seeing named, the show is called The OA on Netflix. Have you heard of this? Mm-mm. It's like a new agey kind of like fantasy show, kind of an anti-science show, mystery with this that's made by a husband and wife team, and the wife is the lead actress. They write it together, and she's such a bad actor to me, this wife, and like anytime she gives a speech or something, I just don't believe anything she says. Like, she always just seems like she's lying, even when she's telling the truth, because she can't act. And that's how Charlotte Gainsbourg's in. Like, whenever she's telling her story and he doesn't, he's like, oh, this sounds made up. I'm like, yeah, it sounds like she's making it all up. I don't believe her. So she also wants cake. He helps her up and he walks her to his apartment, and he says he also has cake. Then he brings her in and he gives her tea, and she says she doesn't want her smelly coat washed. He asks what happens to her. She says it was her fault. She's a bad human being, and he asks her if she wants to talk about it. He never met a bad human being. And she says she wouldn't know where to start. But then she notices fishing fly in the wall, and he likes fly fishing. And he starts talking about fishing lures and fly fishing, and he talks about The Complete Angler by Isaac Walton, a book he loved as a boy, with complete spelled in a wacky old-fashioned way. And she says she has to tell him the whole story of her life for him to understand, and now she knows where to start, but it'll be a long story. And so now we get that the movie's broken up in chapters of her story, and chapter 1 is The Complete Angler. And one thing I like about Lars von Trier movies, though, is he's awesome at these chapter headings and credits and stuff. It's like he gets these graphics he comes up with are awesome, and throughout this movie they're pretty cool. That's one thing I really don't enjoy the movie Breaking the Waves. But those like chapter headings are with the landscapes and the rock music are pretty awesome.
I just think his movies, I mean, this one this one more so than the other, like, what is it like called? Like, these 3 movies are called like the Depression Trilogy or something. In my opinion, like, this is definitely the funniest one.
This one definitely does have some laughs.
This one's my favorite. And it's pretty funny in my opinion. And I think like the transitions and like chapter headings and stuff are very funny typically.
Yeah. So like, what was the chapter heading for this one? It's The Complete Angler, and it might be like kind of a fishing thing or something, or tadpoles or something. I'm not sure, but at any rate, it was pretty cool. And then, so we start with her name is Jo, and it starts with her at 2 years old, where she discovers her vagina. That reminds me, how far back do you remember in your life?
Me, God, not very far. I mean, I certainly don't remember being 2.
I feel like I remember like my second, like Christmas when I was 2, but maybe that's like the only thing I can remember back that far.
Oh yeah, for me, maybe like 6.
Wow, that's not too good.
I had a very weird childhood or something. I don't know. I feel like a lot of things are more like, it's just, it was very bizarre.
Then we flash forward to her at 5 or something like that. She has this friend B, the letter B, and she's kind of the leader between the 2 friends. And they do this thing where they take off their panties and use a detachable shower head to spray water all over her bathroom floor. Also, we should point out, this is like, the late 60s when we start off?
I feel like that's something I wonder, like, watching this movie a lot. But, like, yeah, the time frame is, like, you don't really know when it is.
I thought that maybe it was like, I noticed this in the second when I started trying to follow it more, because here we have, I definitely think her mom's outfit is like super 60s-y. It could be the early 70s, but I think it's probably the 60s. So at any rate, they use this, they spray water all over the bathroom floor, and then they pretend to be frogs, and they slide on their bellies and vagina fronts on the bathroom floor. And then her mom...
I really like that scene too. I like it a lot. It's really cool.
They do all this pretty tastefully,
yeah.
At least in the non-director's cut. And then the mom, Connie Nielsen, comes to the closed door of the bathroom and knocks on it. And Christian Slater, this is our first meeting of Christian Slater. He's in the kitchen in an apron, which is probably kind of symbolic of the relationship between mom and dad in some way. He overhears the mom talking through the window and yelling at the kids, and dad says to leave her alone to himself, not to her. And this is where I first noticed he has a really different voice in this movie. He doesn't do a lot of accents or anything in movies. He did a different voice in the next movie we'll watch, which is The Name of the Rose, but this is one of the few. And yeah, I guess it's not a very convincing British accent.
Oh, he's in the movie version of The Name of the Rose. That's like a Umberto Eco book, right? Like
yes.
I didn't know that he movie version, but interesting. Okay.
It's one of his first movies. He's the kid, Adso, that hangs out with Sean Connery, the detective, or the monk who becomes detective. We find out in this movie he's a doctor, and the mom is a cold bitch who plays solitaire on a chaise lounge in the futon. It's like a combination chaise lounge futon, and Joe hates solitaire, but she does love the rope between her legs in gym class. And she talks about liking the word sensation, which if we think about sensation, the first syllable sounds like sin. And that reminds me of when Simon Dedalus, or Stephen, in the story, the first story of Dubliners was supposed to be a Simon Dedalus, or a Stephen Dedalus story by James Joyce, but it turned into its own thing where he's not Stephen Dedalus. But he talks about liking the word simony because it doesn't sound like a British word or an English word. It has a weird pronunciation. And then I was thinking that his dad is Simon. I don't know. So it's like kind of a sensation. But there's a cool shot of when she's on the ropes of the 3 rope ends, and the one with her on it, we know it's hers because it's wiggling suggestively. And we don't see the girls, we just see the rope ends. That was pretty funny. And in the background, some girls are mopping the basketball court. Then she says she's always demanded more from a sunset than other people, more spectacular colors, and that's her only real sin, which kind of contradicts what she said about being a bad human, if her only sin is to demand more from a sunset.
Yeah.
And he says he doesn't see sin anywhere, Skarsgård does, and she says it's because he doesn't know the rest of her story. And Skarsgård says he doesn't understand the self-hatred due to sin, and sin has outlasted the concept of religion, which does show us we're in a post-God Eurotrash zone, if we hadn't guessed it. And Dad walks in on her reading vagina word. We're back in the flashback now, and Dad walks in on her reading words about female reproductive system in a medical journal. And this is the first movie I was thinking about, like, except for at the very end of True Romance, I think this is the first movie I've seen where Christian Slater is a dad. And he's the classic smoking doctor. Do we see that theme of smoking doctors and priests in so many movies?
This really reminded me of, like, Christian Slater and Shia LaBeouf in this movie, like, both remind me of, like, Stanley Kubrick style, like Tom Cruise and Eyes Wide Shut style.
Yes, their size is a big part of it. Yeah, them being short guys.
And just being, like, kind of, like, especially with, like, Shia LaBeouf really playing, like, a douche. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think you're onto something here. Yeah, they're very, they're cast because of how they look, I think. Their physicality.
And, like, who they are as people, maybe, in real life, too, a little bit. I don't know about Christian Slater, but definitely Shia.
And did you read how Shia LaBeouf got the role?
No.
I guess Lars von Trier requested he send him a picture of himself naked, and instead Shia LaBeouf sent in a video of he and his girlfriend having sex. Like he sent him a hardcore porn.
Like, I just really got a Tom Cruise Eyes Wide Shut, like, vibe from this, where it's like Shia LaBeouf, like Lars von Trier, like, cast him for, like, lols, kind of.
Sure.
Like, that's definitely the impression that I get from the movie, but
Joe's dad loves taking her to the woods, and he talks about trees. He loves trees. And he says the ash tree is the most beautiful tree. And then we hear about insect nymphs. There are no mentions of Vladimir Nabokov in this movie. By the end, I thought was strange. And then she talks about that now she's 15 and she wants to lose her virginity. And she knows this boy with a moped. And the moped guy is Jerome, Shia LaBeouf. And I didn't recognize him for a while in the movie. I didn't know who was going to be in the movie. And I didn't know that was Shia LaBeouf when he had the moped.
Well, he's a complete fucking idiot. I really kind of like do like relate to this or something a little bit. Like,
Shia LaBeouf kind of looks like your ex-boyfriend. They're similar looking guys.
Yeah, no comment on that. But I really do kind of relate to this sort of thing where it's like, yeah, I feel like losing your virginity or like this kind of thing. It's just like, this is always like how it goes. This is like the experience or something.
I feel like this movie came out in a weird time where like it seemed like Shia LaBeouf was going to make a comeback in like big movies. But I guess he kind of did go on to like keep starring in movies of like smaller, like indie movies. But he was in this movie and he was in Fury.
He made his own movie, which like was called Honey Boy or something.
Yeah, I thought about watching that for this, and then I forgot.
And like that was supposed to be like his comeback, and it was really critically acclaimed. But then he got in trouble because he's a wife beater or whatever.
Nice. I remember I was at the theater in years after this and saw a trailer for a movie with he and a boy with Down syndrome, and I was like, not ever seeing that. Never will I see a second of this movie. I'm sorry I saw the trailer.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, he's like a beater or he's an abuser, allegedly. He was dating FKA Twigs and he like supposed to like beat her up or something.
Oh, I've heard of her. Yeah, didn't she end up dating Robert Pattinson?
Oh, I don't even know, probably.
That movie, Fury, it was a hit and it was nominated for Best Supporting Actor for Brad Pitt's haircut. I'm actually quite interested to see if Shia LaBeouf is ever able to mount a comeback after his moment of being a wife beater. Let's see. This is also where I think the first time we meet Joe as the Joe will get to know for a large portion of the movie, played by an actress named Stacey Martin, who I haven't seen in anything else that I can recall. She's Frenchy. I do like. I think we've talked about how Eva Green is really hot. I think Eva Green is the most beautiful. This girl's hot too. Yeah, I have a thing for these wee-fish French actresses. I think. Yeah, this girl was definitely hot, but they were already if we count. What's her face? Charlotte Gainsbourg. This is the fourth or fifth Joe we've already seen in the movie. They really, with the moving of the years. And she's got pigtails, and she asks him to take her virginity. And then Shia LaBeouf gets out his penis, and he jerks off to her pantyless. And then he takes her vaginal and anal virginities both. 3 humps in the vagina and 5 thrusts anally, which they count on the screen. And then we learn from Skarsgård that 3 and 5 are Fibonacci numbers. The Fibonacci sequence. And then she didn't like that experience. But then a couple years later, she and B empty her brother's piggy banks. I think at this point we're in the late 70s. And this is when I started wondering when this takes place. Who has a piggy bank? It's never in my lifetime have I known a guy who has a piggy bank. Yeah, I also think it's just in movies, a lot of times people who are these types of filmmakers, I just feel like modern stuff is really boring and dull and not super visually interesting. Who wants to film a movie that's got iPhones and you know what I mean? That's boring. So I feel a lot of times people just make something timeless because it's more visually interesting or something. But I had a really creepy little coin bank when I was a kid. A marionette clown that didn't move correctly that was supposed to be on a stage that was a black background, and it looked like this broken skinny clown was in prison, and you played music like a music box to some degree, and it would move with the music, but it was always messed up. It was very, very disturbing. I'm not one of those I'm scared of clowns people. If you wanted to be. Things. I mean, when I was a kid, in the 90s or whatever, but I don't really remember any of them specifically. I had this one for years and years, but you didn't break it. unstopped in the back, and you could pour the coins out. And they put on their "fuck me now" clothes, and then they have this game to see who can fuck the most guys on a train before reaching its destination, and the winner will win a bag of chocolates.
This is my favorite scene in this whole movie.
This is also like something that I used to do with people who will remain nameless because they may end up appearing on this podcast. When I was we had a game that had a point system at the mall and other places for talking to girls. And it was really fun and really got me over a lot of fear of talking to girls that would return, of course. Like fear of rejection. It gets you over fear of rejection. It was really good for making you outgoing to women. You realize how responsive women will be if you're just outgoing. But at any rate, yeah, it was like there was a whole scoring system. And then anyway, like this is what's his face? Skeleton Carson said like, oh, this is like fishing for dudes. You got your lures, and we hear Steppenwolf on the soundtrack. And yeah, this is almost like a Scorsese sequence or stuff. This is really
and I love this scene because the music choice once again is like super like on the nose. It's like Born to Be Wild. It's like very like I love it. It's so like stupid but perfect and great. And
it cuts well to the scene. Their outfits in the red and the 70s colors. This is definitely like sometime around 1980, late 70s, 80. So she reels in her first catch, but B is already ahead in the game, and they bone in a lavatory, and then we learn more about the fishing talk, and then she talks to more guys on the train and she talks about having a sick dwarf hamster, and it kind of at some point both guys kind of get the point and try to take her by the hand, and she asks one of the two to go to the lavatory, and he does. But she's still way behind in the game, so they decide to go to first class, and they don't have any tickets, and their friend sasses the porter guy, a lot of the station, the ticket man, what do you call that guy, usher or whatever. And there's this rich guy offers to pay, and B loves to argue. Yeah, she argues defiantly with a porter. And I had once dated a girl that like we got busted making out in a park, and she just like super started going off on the cops in a crazy way, and I had no idea she had this like aversion to police, and she told me later she did after they walked away, but it was really scary. Like she just started cursing them out and going crazy. And then
police are scary. I mean, like I was going I went to my friend's birthday party, like, and I've just had bad luck with police my entire life, but I've been sleeping with a cop actually for a while, ironically. But I went to my friend's birthday party, and I was like driving to Centon, Texas. I got pulled over, and it was like this cop who was like a complete fucking idiot, and he was just like, oh, can I search your car? And I was like, no. and he was like, okay, well, I'm gonna get a dog then. And I was like, whatever, like do what you're gonna do. And so he gets a dog, and like the dog is like hitting all over your car. I don't have drugs in my car, so your dog is like whack, obviously. And like he's just like, so I'm gonna like search your car, and I'm like, yeah, you're gonna like legally search my car.
Yeah, you were gonna do it either way. Yeah.
And so he searched my car, and he broke my fucking glove compartment, and he's just like, I'm convinced that you have drugs in this car. And I'm like, you can be convinced of whatever you want. Like, I don't have drugs, but like, and then this other cop came, and he was just like, I'm really sorry. Like, this guy's kind of crazy, and like, blah, 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 blah. But yeah, it's just nuts. It's like cops. I can see how you get like a weird thing of cops. It's like, I've had this like my whole life. Because it's like, yeah, I started getting in trouble with cops when I was like probably like 13, 14. It's just like, they're fucked up. And I feel like I can see how I don't yell at cops or like do anything crazy to them or anything, but they're just like, they're fucked up. And I can see how like somebody gets to a point where they just like yell at them and go off on them because they're evil.
I have a friend who was for a time roommates with a cop, and this cop, like, okay, you know how like they say like pedophiles and cops have the worst time in prison if they go to prison. So this cop, he was always hanging out with these like orphaned or way underprivileged Latino tween age boys, and had them over at the apartment and stuff. And he eventually got busted with tons of naked photos of them in his truck and stuff.
Of course.
He had totally been molesting them. And so he probably has, if he's still alive, he probably has a terrible time in prison. So anyway, she gets this rich guy. She wears him down with psychology, and then she finally gives him a blowjob in the car, which is our first. I think we saw Shia LaBeouf, unless it was one of those things where Lars von Trier does, where he put Shia LaBeouf's head on somebody else's body's penis. But then we do see a simulated blowjob here with like a fake penis. Did you think it was necessary for it to even be hardcore, or just kind of transgressive for the fun of transgression?
I think like the whole movie is just like fun for transgression. Because I mean, like, he's always like getting in trouble for being like a misogynist and stuff. And I think this whole movie is just kind of like a fun. I think the whole movie is just like a response to that, basically.
They said there's a report that sometimes, like, I forget who said this, that he would just show up to the set naked. I think Jamie Bell said that. I forget who. That Lars von Trier would just show up to direct the movie, sometimes nude. I
talked to a guy on a dating site who was like worked for Lars von Trier and stuff. And he's like, I can introduce you to him and stuff. And I was like, okay.
So we go back, because this rich guy, he was married and he was going to see his wife, and they're going to try to have a kid, and then she blows him on the train. And so now we get the current Joe.
Which is my favorite scene though. Like, he's like, the whole scene is like him being like, I can't. The reason I'm going home is because like I have to have sex with my wife because like we've been wanting to have a kid for like we waited this long to have a kid and stuff, and now we're like kind of old, and like so that's why I'm like rushing home to see my wife and stuff. And she's like, oh, you're like going home to see your wife, and like he's like, please don't take advantage of me. Like I have to like save up all my cum for my wife.
Yeah, which comes up here because now we come back to the thing, and like she says she's used and hurt others for her satisfaction, and Skarsgård disagrees, and he says that maybe that guy went home and had awesome sex with his wife and made a child based on what she did. And I was like, if this guy's having trouble storing up the cum for the wife, it's like him unloading with this teenage girl isn't going to help him.
Yeah, totally. But like Skarsgård is like, I don't know. He's like always trying to see the best, and he's like this like autistic, like loser kind of guy.
Yeah, she says he finds the story harmless and humorous. She says she discovered her power as a woman and used it without regards for others, which is totally unacceptable.
And she kind of like spits out all this guy's cum too after like giving him a blowjob, which
she wins the chocolates.
Because she like wastes all of it that he was supposed to like give his wife for like having.
Oh yeah, she spits the seed upon the ground.
Yeah.
And she says, so remember, she says that using her power as a woman is totally, without regard for others, totally unacceptable. That'll come up at the very end of this long movie. So she gets more tea, and now she tells Skarsgård her name. Oh, this is where he reveals his name, which is, I guess, Sigvist or something. What the hell was it? Sigmund? What's his name? Seligman. And this is where he reveals that he kind of hates Jews.
Well, and yeah, like Lars von Trier is also known for being like anti-Semitic.
Yeah, this movie's kind of anti-Semitic.
Another little like joke.
Okay. And this is where we have the thing about the nail cutting. Which hand, where they say that, talk about like two different kinds of people who cut their right hand nails first, and people cut their left hand nails first.
Yeah, like if you cut your left hand nails first, you're like a carefree kind of person.
No, it's the opposite.
Well, wait, hold on. No, because like if
you cut your easier to cut ones first, that means you're carefree.
Oh wait, so yeah, like no, but that would be your left hand.
It would be the left hand for me because I'm left-handed.
No, but like if
oh, you're right. Never mind. Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. You are correct. I'm exactly opposite. Yeah, it's
yeah, so for you, it makes sense that you would think that because you were left-handed.
Yeah, I cut my right hand nails first because I'm no fun.
But most people are right-handed, so you would cut your left hand nails first.
Yeah, which ones do you cut first?
Okay, so here's the really weird thing. So like when you like clasp your hands, right? Like which thumb is on top?
Right now it's the left thumb.
The left thumb, right? So for me too, it's the left thumb. But I'm actually right-handed. And it's almost always like whatever hand you write with, that's like on top. But
that's
like
crazy.
Neither of my hands is really like too dominant or something. Like I can kind of use like either one.
Oh, I'm very left-handed, yeah.
For me, I guess it wouldn't really matter that much. Like I guess, it wouldn't really matter that much. But I guess probably if I had to, like I would probably cut my, like technically I'm like right-handed, but I don't necessarily feel like right hand dominant or anything necessarily. Like if I reach for something or something, I would like reach for something with my left hand as much as my right hand or something. But I write with my right hand.
So which nails do you cut first then?
I would probably cut my like, I would cut my right hand first, just because, like, yeah, that's the more.
Whoa,
difficult.
you're a wild child.
No, I'm not the
You're
wild
the person
child.
who loves life.
No, I'm the opposite of that. Like, I'm the person who will do the more like difficult hand first.
Oh, okay, never mind.
Like,
oh, yeah, because never mind.
I
I'm still confused.
People always say to me that they're like, yeah, like if I want to eat something or something, I'll eat the gross stuff first and save the good stuff.
Me too. That's what I do.
So I'm a more like serious person.
Me too. Yeah, my feeling is, see, her theory is that she cuts the easiest hand first because then the hand that's left is the easiest of what's left. My thing is, like, if I cut the hard one first, I'm more focused. So I know I'll do a good job. And then
but for me, like, neither is like too hard because I don't have like a super dominant side or something.
Well, I mean, cutting my nails is not that hard. But yeah. I do cut the harder one first. Okay, so then we have where he eats the pastry with the cake fork, which she thinks is terrible.
She thinks that's like gay.
Yeah, she does. And he tells her that fake story about the Nazis and the cake fork or something. This brings us to chapter 2, because she knew someone else who did this, ate pastry with a cake fork. And it's Jerome, chapter 2, Jerome.
Shia LaBeouf.
Yeah, and so Joe bones some guys, and one of them's a fat guy. And that's a funny shot of her with the fat guy naked. And he tells she tells them all she's never come with anyone before them. And then they have this club, and B has this flock of girls in a college club, and they chant the devil's interval in this basement, and they have a rule, which is none of them can have boyfriends, and none of them can have sex with a guy more than once. And Joe is in the club. And B breaks the code of the club by falling in love with someone, getting a boyfriend, and she tells Joe the secret of sex is love. And Joe decides she wants a serious sex education. And here we see some poses, like porno poses I
really love these two.
that I guess are in Stellan Skarsgård's imagination of her being like a sex class
when
teacher.
She's going to school. She's like, I wanted to get an education. In his mind, her getting an education is like all this like pervert stuff.
Yeah, so we see, her in a school girl, and she's erotically posing, and like, yeah, it's pretty sexy. Yeah, she's got like the chalkboard pointer. She got something like between her legs, all crazy. She's stroking it. So she drops out of medical school, and she applies for being an assistant at a printing house. And this lady who's hiring her, I didn't recognize this actor, the hiring chick, and she's very unimpressed by Joe, but she goes and checks with her boss in her boss's office, and she comes back saying she got the job, and the boss in the office turns out to be Shia LaBeouf as Jerome, whom once again I did not recognize. I thought he was James McAvoy for a minute. And then suddenly it occurred to me it was him. He tells her he's just acting boss for his sick uncle. He doesn't shave. I really liked this scene where he's like the super douchey guy talking about how he's sitting in for his uncle as the boss, that he leads her on through the office, and he's like, here's this girl, do this, do this. And he's like being all bossy and like stupid.
I really like the whole first chapter of this movie, to be honest. Like, I really love it. I don't love the second volume.
So far, I thought the movie was much better than I thought it was going to be.
But I really like the whole first part, yeah.
And he hits on Joe in the elevator, and she tells him she's not into it. And then he stopped the elevator to have sex with her, and she turns him down, that he can't get the elevator restarted. And he ends up crawling out of this hole in the top of the wall and pulling her out of the elevator. But she gets to keep the job, and she tries to, like, in a war with him, to like just be ultra awesome at it. Because like he can't fire her because then he'd lose. He takes her to task for her bringing in his breakfast in one part, and that's when he asks her where the cake. He makes her bring it in again. Then he asks her where that cake fork is. Then this is where Sarsgaard tells the story.
He's also gay and loves the cake fork.
Now we get another digression by Sarsgaard. Every time Sarsgaard digresses, I just kind of would wish the movie would stick with his digression and not go back to the story, though. So I knew I couldn't be enjoying the movie too much, because I was like, I really just wish this was the movie about fishing or cake forks. And then she and Jerome are driving, and he can't parallel park in this spot. She does it for him. More symbolism with the cake fork there. Then she starts wanting to be like an object for Jerome, like being something that he handles in a masculine, callous way, but with professionalism or something. Kind of gets weird. Like, I wasn't sure. I couldn't really follow her logic on why she suddenly decides this, but whatever. Kind of made sense as a thing to want for sexual purposes. And then she falls in love with Jerome.
Yeah, I think she like loves him, so she's just trying to like not sleep with him or something. Since she has like feelings for him.
Now she's walking in the forest again at some point. She's still having sex with lots of dudes, and she stops letting them touch them with their hands while she's having sex with them. Then she stops having sex. Then she finds Jerome. She like stalks Jerome. She finds his house. And then she starts practicing writing a letter to him with her feelings for him. And then she finally brings herself to bring a letter to his office. But then when she goes into his office, the uncle's returned. Jerome has left to elope with the secretary who interviewed her and take a trip around the world. She starts a thing where she like rides the train and masturbates on the trains surreptitiously, thinking about Jerome's details in the faces and bodies of other passengers on the trains. Then we get a flashback to Christian Slater in the forest. This is where he tells us that the souls of the trees, when in the wintertime, we see their souls. I think we need the beret when we talk about that. In the wintertime, you see the soul of the tree.
Why do you have that?
A girl we went to college with talked me into buying it when we were in college.
A girl that you and I went to college with?
Yeah, I don't know if you remember that I'm trying to think of, her name was, I'll just say her name because it's so crazy. Her name was Mimi.
No, I do not.
She didn't, I don't know, she's not from your circle of friends, I don't think. But yeah, I dated her for like a brief minute when I attended the school. And one day we were in LA at some like vintage store or something. She talked me into buying it, and I've had it ever since. It used to be larger, it shrunk in the watch. You
and I have talked about this, and like men are not supposed to wear hats. Like, unless, okay, you could wear a hat if it's like
functional.
Yeah, it's functional. Like, you need to keep the sun off your face. Like, you're at a Dodger game and you need to wear a fucking hat to keep the sun off your face. You're going for a hike, or like you're cold and you need to wear a beanie. But like, there's no fashion instance where like any man should be wearing a hat.
Well, this one's practical to talk about the art film.
No one should ever wear a hat. And like the fact that Mimi talked to you, like Mimi's gotta go. If Mimi told you to wear a hat, like she's not like in
She's cute though. Part. She looked like Stacey Dash. In fact, I thought she was black until like the third time we hung out. She told me she was Persian. So
Stacey Dash is pretty attractive. I mean, understandable.
She started, Joe in the movie, she starts boning tons of dudes to forget Jerome. And this is where we get the montage of penises from different parts of the world. Or I guess she went around trying to find these penis places.
Which is like racist and offensive, obviously.
What's that?
I feel like which is racist and offensive. Like,
yes.
Lars von Trier is always trying to push the envelope in this type of way. People are always saying he's like racist, sexist. Like, so he's always like leaning into that.
And then this is where she tells him all the cuts foreskin would reach from Mars and back.
Which I think is funny. Because it can be. How could you know? But it's a super funny line.
Yeah, who would know this? Yeah. Get to chapter 3 of the movie, which is Mrs. H.
This is so good too. Like
this has a part that's pretty good. Yeah, pretty funny. So this is where she has all the messages from different guys on her huge old 80s answering machine, and she makes a cup and die system for replying to the messages by chance, because the men, I guess, don't mean anything to her. So she whatever the die tells her that she rolls will tell her how she replies to the guy. Like some guy, she'll just be like, we'll never see each other again. And some guy, she'll say whatever. So then she's talking about a particular guy, Mr. H, and he's a sticky bastard. And she keeps trying to get him to leave her apartment at one point after they have sex before another dude's coming over. And she tells him her way to get rid of him is she tells him she loves him too much to see him anymore because she knows he'll never leave his wife and kids. Which, if you have a sticky bastard, that may not be the best way to get rid of him.
I think It depends. I would say it depends for sure. I mean, most dudes aren't going to leave their wife for you if they're smart.
That's true.
But, like, this guy is dumb.
Yeah, so he returns, and he's got some things, and he's like under his arm, and he's left his family, and is just going to move in with her in her crappy apartment, I guess, or get another place. And then it turns out his wife, who is played by Uma Thurman, has followed him there with the kids and causes this big, long scene. This was really funny, I thought, her with the kid. Uma Thurman, she was nominated for this movie was nominated and won tons of awards in Europe, in different countries. And she was nominated for Best Supporting Actress somewhere. And I thought she was really good in this movie.
This scene, everyone that I've talked to about this means their favorite. So funny.
It is. She's so funny, like in this part. And I really sympathized with her. I found the kids being there wrong, but I sympathized with Thurman. The guy was a huge asshole.
The best part is where she's like talking to her and she's like, whatever you want to call him, like you can call him whatever, or you can just call him the man. Like you can call him like daddy, you can call him the man. Like she's talking to her kids and she's just like, you can refer to daddy as the man or whatever you want to call him now that he's leaving us for this woman. And like
she has great lines in it. I wrote down one where she says, would it be all right if I show the children the whoring bed?
It's just so good. It's so funny. Drinking a Bloody Mary this time.
Ooh, I love Bloody Marys.
Me too.
That's it's one of the only ways I like to drink vodka.
I drink pretty much exclusively vodka.
Drink a little recently because like there was a deal at Walgreens where you could get a big bottle of Kahlua with a shot of vodka, like an airliner bottle of vodka for like cheaper than you could get. And it came with a glass for cheaper than you could just buy the bottle of Kahlua. I was like, well, hell, vodka's good in Kahlua to me too. I bought a couple of those.
I drink vodka because there's like virtually no calories in it. So I just drink like vodka sodas for the most part. But tonight I'm drinking I drink vodka soda, but I also drink I had these alcohol left over from Thanksgiving.
Ah.
So I had I don't know, blood orange ciders and shit like that.
Oh, I like blood oranges.
So I drink that and stuff, but now I'm having cream.
Damn, that sounds good. I like those. I've also been drinking those. Not recently, but around Halloween, I was drinking the micheladas.
Oh yeah, I love micheladas.
Yeah. Back to the movie, we find out that Jo, when she was 7, she had an operation, and we never find out on what. Some unnamed operation, and then she felt lonely afterwards. And this reminded me of, I'm kind of obsessed with, I want to write a TV pilot or something, or for a TV show about the rise of popularity of X-Men comic books. Mm-hmm. And in the 70s through 1990, and then the formation of Image Comics. And the guy that was the editor-in-chief of Marvel in the 1975 or whatever is a guy named Jim Shooter. And he has given several super long interviews and things. There's a 7-hour long interview on a podcast with him. And he always talks about, every one of them always mentions this operation he had where he started, that when he was recovering from is when he got into comic books. And that none of them ever say what the operation was. And he has a jimshooter.com, and even it talks about his unnamed operation. And I wrote them an email because I wanted to research to write this story idea I had. And I was like, what was the operation Jim Shooter had? And they never got back to me. And then I realized his website hadn't been updated in 2 or 3 years. So I don't know if anybody even looked at my email.
That seems to be an issue in a lot of people's lives, a sickness or operation.
They don't want to talk about what was it?
Yeah, some illness or operation early in their life.
So then they talk about Stellan Skarsgård fills her in on the death of Edgar Allan Poe. And that brings us to Chapter 4, Delirium. And this begins a black and white part of the movie.
This is most Christian Slater-y part.
Yeah, you're right. He's dying in the hospital. And this is where I started wondering if his voice had been distorted in post. And she visits him. She gives him tree limbs and leaves. And Slater has this crazy fit on the ground, which I thought was pretty good. And I liked
he's having like delirium. Like he explains, like Edgar Allan Poe had this like delirium. Like he's like, Edgar Allan Poe went through this thing when you're like withdrawing from like alcohol, this shit that happens when you like withdraw from like alcohol and benzos and shit like that, and you like go through like this delirium. And then like she's like, I know what delirium is. And then it like flashes back to like her father like having this like delirium in the hospital.
I thought his delirium raving was pretty good, but I also thought his voice sounded more like his normal voice when he was in the delirium.
This was like, I mean, like, I want to say, like, this will come later, but all the things when you're like, do you want to see more of Christian Slater? Like, all the Christian Slater parts were, like, very brutal in this movie for the most part.
Then she leaves and goes elsewhere in the hospital, like to deal with her pain, and has sex with an employee. And then I thought at first it was a rigor mortis corpse that she was having sex with, which another thing, there's no necrophilia in this movie. They really missed on that.
You're right. That was surreal. I have this thing, I've like written some short stories that have been published and stuff, and like I like to think that like in every short story I write, I like to add like a necrophilia element into it, just because I think it's really funny. Like I remember like I don't know. I remember just like people always telling me in my life, like weird stories about like necrophilia and stuff. So I like to always add like a weird element into that of like every thing that I write.
True stories or?
Yeah, like true stories.
Whoa. No one has ever told me that.
I've gotten told so many necrophilia stories in my life. That's just an aside, but I'm not going to share them on the Christian Slater Monitor right now, but maybe some other.
So then we get to Slater dad. He's sedated in the hospital now. And they wipe his ass, which is dirty again, like in that scene of Gleaming the Cube. And she goes and has more hospital sex. And then she comes back and Christian Slater's dying. He dies. And she's like dripping wet between her legs. And we get that shot of like between her thighs, like leaking. With him dying in the bed, viewed between them.
That's her version of like crying and being sad.
Oh, this thing of The Graduate. Yeah, that's funny. It's like her vagina's crying. I didn't even get that. So Skarsgård says once again she's being too hard on herself. She thinks that's really awful that she was wet when he died. And then Skarsgård listens to an unfinished hymn that's been redone by Bach, and he talks about polyphonic spree, and he talks about the Fibonacci sequence again. Then he said this piece has 3 voices, bass, left hand, and right hand on the piano. And this is where we get Chapter 5, The Little Organ School. And then she tells she has 3 lovers that were like the 3 voices in the hymn. And the first bass is F, who was a good lover and a kind man. He bathes her. He has fun. They have some fun practical lighting with the cheap apartment lamps here. I was like, they did a good job lighting these scenes. This is a very well made movie.
It's like super, like cool too. It's like weird. I'm like, cool. Like weird, like a bath that he makes for her with like pillows and like.
Oh yeah. Did that look good to you? No, you don't have to answer that. So then G is.
I have a true bathtub, so I don't need to like.
Oh, crazy! I don't. I just have a shower here. G is like left hand or the right hand or whatever, and he's like a more handsome-y guy, I guess, traditionally. And she describes him as being like a cat, and he makes her wait, and she likes him being in charge, and he moves like a jaguar. And we watch like a leopard kill a deer.
Which is sort of corny. Like, this is like a part of the movie I find super corny. Like, it's kind of like one of those things where like, it's like a very male perspective. Like my dad, my dad is always like, I've met so many men who are like, yeah, like women think like The Rock is like hot or something. And I'm like, what? Like, I don't know. Like the things that like men think like women find attractive, like everyone, like my dad and like a bunch of people are like The Rock and like pro wrestlers and like some guy who's like 6'4" and like bald and like I don't know any women who think The Rock is attractive.
Yeah, you know what's funny is like I remember, and it's because it was so weird to me even at the time. Like weird to me at the time that it stuck in my head. But years ago, when we were in college, I was working on the set of some other guy's short film, and like the makeup lady was reading a Chronicles of Riddick novelization and was talking about how hot to her Vin Diesel was, and even he, like I was like, He doesn't seem like a guy ladies would just be like into to
No.
me. He seems more like The Rock or something where they'd be like, eh.
Yeah, like I feel like a lot of men are like, yeah, like women think like The Rock is like hot or something. I know so many men who are like, that's like women's ideal. And I'm like, what women? I've never met.
Do you think Vin Diesel sounds like
woman
Harvey
who thinks
Firestein?
that. Yeah, like I've never met like any woman who's like Vin Diesel or like The Rock. Like that's my dream man or something. It's so weird. Like, and this was kind of like
see,
one
that
of
seems
the-
weird to me too. Like based on my experience with women, it's like, no, I don't think that The Rock is their dream guy.
Yeah, we're like that guy he's in charge, like a tiger, like or something. Like that seems like a very like male perspective.
I disagree. I think women do kind of. A lot of women do like have that.
No,
kind
I
of
think
fantasy.
that women like people being in control. I just think
Yeah.
like to compare them to like a cat or something is a little bit silly.
I see. So she goes for walks between boning appointments. That's her. That's her way of relaxing between sex. Which always confused me. Like, how does she have money or make money? She just has sex and goes for walks. Because she has all these different office jobs that we just don't see. We're supposed to assume she's
Yeah,
working
like when
in
you're a woman,
moments
you
not
don't have to
recorded.
worry about silly things like money.
So she's walking in the woods one day and she just finds Jerome tearing up. Oh, and she finds him among torn up photos of him with his wife that he eloped with, or his fiance if they didn't get married. I forget. And
I think they're married. I think he says it's like his wife.
Yeah, and Stellan Skarsgård's like, this has to be made up. It's like too many coincidences in this story.
Well, and it's like the same thing where like he lifts her up from the thing, like he lifted her up from the elevator, and he's always like plucking her from like below. Like in the elevator, he like plucks her up from the elevator, and in this scene, he like plucks her up to like the.
Oh yeah, she tells Skarsgård if he's gonna listen to the story, just go with it. And then so she says the third voice is her love with Jerome, and she asks Jerome to fill all her holes. Is this the first time she said "fill all my holes" in the movie? Okay, then this is where she cries to Jerome that her vagina no longer has any sensation.
Yeah, like once she falls in love, she's like, I can't feel anything.
And we cut to the end credits, and this is where I was wondering once again, is this Rammstein? And
yeah, gotta be. I didn't look, but it has to be Rammstein.
And I was also thinking, boy, this music is terrible.
I like love it. I think it's so funny.
It is funny, but like it's like just the music as music. I was like, I would never be like, you know what I need to put on right now? Some
I've been
Rammstein.
sleeping with this like cop who's like a young millennial or something, and like that's the type of shit he listens to. Like he loves like stupid new metal from like 1999.
Also, at the end of part one, we see a montage teaser trailer for part two, things in part two. And I was like, damn, can I buy my ticket now? No. I was thinking, boy, I really don't want to see volume 2 based on this trailer.
Part 2 sucks, in my opinion. I don't really like the second part very much.
It looked like it was like if all the Euro harshing is in that trailer. It's like really like get ready, it's gonna get crazy.
The Euro harsher stuff is like, I don't know, like the second part is just like all like, it's just like expanding on the first part of the movie, but like in a way that's like completely unnecessary or something. I don't really like part.
Well, I think, the first one it's a 5-hour story of how she gets to this ending, like of how she gets beat up in this alley. And
but I will say that
maybe that's like 2 hours too long.
So like so it kind of reminds me of like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood in this way, where it's like I went and got a bunch of dental work. And I was like, I'm going to go see like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood as like a reward for getting this dental work. So I went to see Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and when I was watching it, I was like this wasn't a good reward for my dental work. Like I didn't really like it or something.
Me neither.
But then once I got to the ending, I was like, okay, like I can kind of appreciate this or something. Like it's kind of funny to like make the movie so like long and boring or something to get to this ending. Like I feel like the ending of Nymphomaniac is like you sit through a 5-hour movie to get to this like kind of like punchline or something, and I feel like that is funny to me or something. Like to make you sit through like a 5-hour movie to get to just like a punchline, I think is sort of funny. So I can kind of appreciate like the very, very last scene or something. But in general, I don't really like second part of the movie.
So we open on Joe masturbating, and she's got no sensation. She's in Jerome's bed. She goes to the bathroom and beats her genitals with a wet dish towel maybe the kitchen. She beats her genitals with a wet towel. No luck. Then Stellan Skarsgård tells her about Zeno's paradox of the tortoise and Achilles. And he says she couldn't get satisfaction because she was chasing satisfaction. And this is where Joe realizes that Skarsgård is a virgin. And he tells her he's asexual, and she says the reason she knows he's a virgin is because he didn't get excited by her stories, and everyone else does. And I was thinking, fuck, you know what? That means I'm a virgin too, because I didn't get excited by the dirty stories. I was kind of psyched to find out I was a virgin.
Well, and you're also like, what was the thing that you were saying that you're like, I would rather hear about the fishing.
Yeah, I would have rather heard about the fishing, yeah, for sure. But here we have where he brings up these other stories, the Canterbury Tale, Decameron, 1001 Nights, the Arabian Nights. And
this whole story, like everything that he knows about like sexuality is like from a book or something.
Yeah, I read the 1001 Nights, and I think I read the unedited version. They released 2 versions of the Arabian Nights, and I think maybe even more since then. But Richard Burton's translation of Arabian Nights, they had a clean version and a dirty version. Which, back to Bram Stoker's Dracula, she's reading the dirty version in Bram Stoker's Dracula, the Coppola movie. There's a part where she's reading it, and I thought it was a really good note, because Bram Stoker's Dracula, the novel Dracula, basically seems like a cleaned up version of a porno, when there was a cleaned up version of Arabian Nights you could buy. But apparently the dirty version was much bigger seller. And I think I have the dirty version, but I don't think it's that dirty. Like, honestly, it's really, like, not much of it seems to be about sex, and it's not very graphic or anything. So, or what do you call it?
What do you think about Richard Burton?
Sir Richard Burton, or the actor Richard Burton?
The actor Richard Burton.
Oh, he's interesting. This is a different Richard Burton. But this is Captain Richard Burton, or whatever. Yeah, Captain Sir Richard Francis Burton did the Arabian Nights. But the actor Richard Burton, I don't know. He's probably not one of my faves. I'm trying to think if he's in any... I don't know if I've seen a lot of his movies. I saw Night of the Iguana recently. He was pretty good in that. What do you think?
I have this friend, we had like a falling out this year, which was one of the rough parts of my 2021. We'll talk about this at the end of the podcast. I'll ask you about your year. My friend is obsessed with Richard Burton and like Liz Taylor and stuff.
Oh.
And she like loves Richard Burton. I've never really, but like my mom also loves Richard Burton.
Interesting.
Like, I don't really know that much about him, obviously, but I watched a bunch of like videos of him like on talk shows and stuff like that. Like,
how was he?
I can see why people think he's attractive. Like he's very like masculine or something. Like I feel like he's very like he's like a portrait of like you know how like Sean Connery said that thing about how like he thinks like women should be like slapped around or something.
Yes, I do.
Like Richard Burton is very like has that vibe, you know? So I can see why people think
he really does.
Yeah, I can see why people think he's attractive. But so I was just going to ask what you felt about him, but you don't know that much about him.
Yeah, I've seen some of his movies. He's not one of like my favorite actors based on movies I've seen, but I feel like he has a lot of ones that are big that I didn't even see. Yeah, I've seen like Spy Who Came In From the Cold is probably not one of my favorite spy movies. He's in that movie Beckett, Peter O'Toole. I think that was a big thing in its day, but it's like, it's all right. About Henry II. And let's see. Yeah, so I guess...
Welsh or something, and he like is just crazy looking and like has
he is crazy looking.
And then he had that whole thing with like I know there's like a bunch of letters published between him and like Liz Taylor that are like he wrote her these crazy love letters and stuff, which I've never really read either. I would have thought that you might have, just because that's kind of seems like it would be like your thing.
Yeah, no, I haven't. I've never had much of a Liz Taylor obsession.
My mom looks very much like Liz Taylor.
Ooh.
And so I think like people always tell me she looks like Elizabeth Taylor and stuff. So I think like, but yeah, I don't really either.
That goes back to my father's theory that people gravitate to actors. They subconsciously they gravitate to actors that look like them.
I think it's definitely people gravitate towards people who look like them.
Oh,
I think about this all the time.
That's like your why you only hang out with white people?
I mean, I certainly don't only hang out with white people. I don't think anyone could accuse me of that. You can accuse me of a lot of things, but certainly not like hanging out or dating white people. It would not be my thing. I would even say like, I don't have like some weird like race fetish thing, but like I would say I'm almost exclusively not attracted to white people. But I'm not going to say that like, you know, I'll date white people. That like not my first choice.
Well, I like to spread it around, but I'm a virgin, so.
Yeah, aren't we all? I've never even kissed a boy, to be honest. But if I had, it would not be a white person. But like, no, I feel like people, when you see people a lot of the time, like celebrities and stuff, you know, like Mick Jagger and Bianca Jagger, like they look a lot alike. You see it, like it's really pronounced in like gay couples because like since they're same sex, you can see it more. Like,
oh, wow.
Like they'll date people who look just like them or something. And I think that's like a scientific thing. Like a lot of people date people who look like them, but it's weird because it's like, I think it can be one or the other. Like, I think you can also be attracted to people who look very much not like you or something because it's like, that should be what people are.
No, I was going to say that maybe it depends on how you feel about yourself.
But it also should be like technically like what would be like the most like genetically like advantageous would be someone who is like very genetically different than you. Like theoretically, you know, like your kid would have the most like genetic advantage to date someone who looks super different than you because, you know, like they would have a super different like immune system. But I notice a lot that people date people who look just like them. Like I often see people and I'm like, they look so much alike. But anyway, that's a whole other conversation.
You might also be attracted to someone who reflects your values, which might also come out in the way they look, just based on the way they make themselves up, their attitudes toward fitness, dressing, hair, things like their taste, but might reflect their values, which might reflect your values because you chose them.
True.
So this is where like, yeah, he's a asexual. He's never had sex with a man or a lady and he's not into it. He's tried some masturbation and didn't get anything out of it. And they discuss Eastern Orthodoxy and the Roman Catholic split here and the philosophies of the Western Church and the Eastern Church. And the Western Church is the church of suffering and the Eastern Church is the church of happiness. And this gives her the idea for Chapter 6, Eastern and Western Church. Also subtitled The Silent Duck. Now we're back to Jo as a kid again, like a child, and we see she has a vision in a field and she has a seizure that results in her first orgasm without even touching herself. And in her ecstatic seizure vision, she sees a uterus flanked by the whore of Babylon riding on Nimrod the bull and Valeria Massalina, third wife of Claudius, who was supposed to be one of the biggest nymphomaniacs in history, which is explained to her by Stellan Skarsgård. Then we're back to Jo in this normal flow of the time story, not the present day her telling the story, but Stacey Martin Jo. She gets depressed by her lack of desire, and now this movie's really moved into the Pastello-verse, and Jerome's clothes remind me of like the way people dress in the movie Reds, which is a movie I've started 50 times and can never make it through. It's like 1,000 hours long. And yeah, it's kind of a Pastello-verse with greens movie too. Cool clothes in it though. Let's see. Then there are these 3 floating leaves she sees that give her hope for her sexuality. Make her think she can claim it by force. And it doesn't work. She tries to bone Jerome a lot to get it back, and it doesn't work, but it encourages Jerome, and they have some fun. And this is where they're at the restaurant, and he offers her a £5 note, or £5 or something, to insert a teaspoon inside her vagina. And they're at a crowded, fancy restaurant at a table, and she proceeds to insert not one, but several teaspoons, one at a time, inside herself. And when Udo Kier, I thought it was pretty funny, Udo Kier playing the waiter, he brings them dessert. He has to go get more spoons because they've made all the spoons disappear that they've had before. And when they leave, all of the spoons fall out of her vagina onto the floor, and you get a funny reaction shot of Udo Kier. And if you ever wander around Beverly Hills, half the population looks like Udo Kier impersonating.
I remember one day being in Beverly Hills and seeing like a small child pushing a stroller of another baby, like a kid that was like maybe 7, like pushing a baby in a stroller, like drinking a Starbucks.
Damn, babies having babies.
I swear to God. And like, obviously it wasn't like a baby having a baby. It was like a sibling or something. But
Sure.
I was just like, this is wild. This is very like Beverly Hills, and I cannot.
With his Starbucks or her Starbucks.
Mm-hmm.
So, what's her face? Jo gets pregnant by Jerome, and she insists on a cesarean section so her vagina will be as it was if it starts to work again for her. And when she's having the child in the light or whatever, in the mirror above her or whatever, she sees the reflection, or like in a refraction or something, she sees a reflection of her son being born, and she swears he's laughing. He's born. And Skarsgård says that's how Thomas Mann described Ham's birth in his Faustus as a laughing son of Noah, and he was like the Antichrist or something, or evil. And I've never read Thomas Mann's Faust at all. Have you ever read any Thomas Mann? You said you were really into Faust, but I immediately think of Goethe.
No, yeah, I haven't read Thomas Mann.
I've read Death in Venice, which we'll kind of get to later. So she finds recrimination in the child's eyes, and she thinks her son doesn't love her as she tries to mom it. And she wants a lot of sex, but she still can't feel anything. She has another time where she says, fill all my holes. And this is where we get the thing where LaBouffe says she should start having sex with other dudes to try and find fulfillment. And this was reminding me of Breaking the Waves. And this also, she starts slapping him after he agrees. Boy, what a great day for a man to get slapped around by your wife after you tell her to find pleasure with other men. And so she has a new version of her fuck me now clothes. She starts dressing like a sexy piano teacher and leaving Shia LaBeouf with the baby. And she uses a scheme with fake car trouble to attract strange men by unplugging all her like spark plugs or something, which is pretty wacky. And this is where we have talk of Beethoven and fugues. Oh yeah, she's this piano teacher. And LaBeouf is not happy with his wife constantly boning these other guys all day. What a shocker that it doesn't make him happy. And she starts getting these phony love letters, or that come to her in the mail. And she like tries to answer the mail and get these love letters that keep coming to her. She doesn't know they're phony yet because she doesn't want Jerome to see them. She tries to do it when he's not around. She realizes he's always around when she gets the mail. And then she realizes he's writing her these letters. And it's a test to see how she reacts to them from him. And her not telling him about them is exactly what he feared. And I started getting really bored already with Volume 2 here. I wrote this down, like, Volume 2 really boring me at this point. And it just
doesn't have the magic of, like, the first one.
There's no pace to it. And you start to here's, like, at some point pretty soon, like, it starts to occur to me that we're, like, getting a list. And I think anytime you get the chapter thing in a movie, like, a lot of times once you're kind of bored with the movie, you start being like, how many chapters are left? Let's see. It's like, this one we don't know ahead of time how many there will be. It ends up being the Fibonacci numbers, 3 in the first movie and 5 in the second, which is why the Silent Duck has to be a sub-chapter so we don't get into 9 chapters. Anyway, so this we get the Dangerous Man, but the Dangerous Man is not a chapter, another cheat. It's just it's a sub-chapter within the chapter. She's rolling a stroller with Marcel through the park, and now it's Charlotte Gainsbourg. This is our first shot of Charlotte Gainsbourg as Jo, and it's no longer Stacey Martin. And then she decides she wants to bone this African immigrant who hangs out in the park outside her apartment window. And her idea is that she can't speak with him, and she finds that a turn on. And so she hires this translator guy to go to the park and talk to the African to relay messages of her desire for him. Now, when she's talking to the translator, she calls the guy an African. Note that. So the African meets her at the hotel, and he brings his brother. And they strip her naked, and they just immediately get to boning her. But I guess they're not immediately, because they debate about who gets what holes in what order or something. And I was thinking, boy, I wish I could have seen this interracial double penetration on the big screen. Boy, big tragedy. And they eventually pull out and start fighting with each other, arguing, and they maintain erections as they squabble, which was kind of funny. And she just leaves. But now when she's narrating, talking about them, she calls them Negroes. And Skarsgård says she shouldn't use that word, and she says she hates political correctness. But she didn't call them Negroes when she was talking to the translator, so she's a hypocrite. And she still had no vaginal feelings or anything. She did not feel anything when they were with them. when she was with those guys. So they're gone. And now she goes to a lobby in an apartment or office building, and it's like filled with women who are called in one at a time from this like lobby. Did you think this is an apartment building or an office building?
I guess, I don't know, like, I guess it's an apartment building?
It was confusing. So there's some kind of lobby anteroom thing where all these women are hanging out in chairs and kind of looking at the floor, not talking to each other
the
much.
Jamie Bell part?
Yeah, we're at the Jamie Bell part. And the women are called, like Jamie Bell comes out and calls them back into this other thing. And I liked Jamie Bell's clothes a lot. I feel like he dresses kind of like I like to dress in this, except for I didn't like his shoes. And Joe notices one woman's shins have whip marks all over them. And he's really terse with the women in the lobby when he talks to them. He makes one leave. And then he talks to Joe and tells her he thinks she's in the wrong place. And as a test, he's going to hit her in the face. And she says, okay. But then right before he's going to strike her, she says no. And that's when we realize that he's a sadist. So the point, like, we just had the interracial sex. And now we've been introduced to sadist. At this point in the movie, I started making a mental list of what we haven't seen yet in sex. That's why I started thinking about, like, have we seen Nabokov? Have we seen, so, like, then and I was like, are we just going to watch this movie, try to go through and fulfill showing every part of this list I'm making in my head? So what have we not seen? We haven't seen her try to get help and get clean. We haven't seen pedophilia. We haven't seen lesbianism. And we haven't seen rape. And we have not discussed Sigmund Freud. We'll see what we get to. Also, we know what we haven't seen is the color red. Like it's all kind of very pastel, everything we see. So anyway, she comes back to Belle's place after he makes her leave when she wouldn't let him hit her. And this time she lets him smack her around in the lobby. And then he agrees to see her and tells her to go out and buy a riding crop. A real one, not one from a sex shop. And he gives her a name, Fido. And then she goes to like a store and talks to the horse store to buy the whip. And she gets questioned on what kind of horse she has and what kind of riding she does and stuff. This is funny. So then she goes to back to Jamie Bell's, and he has a lot of rope, and he hears her face down to a couch, and he cuts off her panties, and he puts a phone book under her pelvis so he can better check her oil, and then he starts cropping her, her very pale behind, not cropping her like a photo, but spanking her. And then Skarsgård talks to her about the origin of this knot that's came from mountain climbing, and she calls it his weakest digression. And I was thinking, it's still way more interesting than your story. Let's stick with this mountain climbing. Then Belle has her bring a bunch of change, and the coins look like American quarters to me, which they must not have been. And that was another time.
This just makes me realize that like Charlotte Gainsbourg version is like a female sexuality version. Skarsgård's version is like a male sexuality version, which is a virgin or something. But like, I think it's just like a version of like male sexuality, because like you're just like, yeah, I would rather hear about like horses and fly fishing, and like the actual sexuality part of it is like super dull.
Well, it's like what we see isn't just, if she just told the story and we didn't actually watch it all dramatized. If it was a fast montage of her story, it might be better. I was thinking about this because I was like, when the movie goes on later and does some things, it's because after this I tried to watch Melancholy and I turned it off thinking it was just kind of slow. It wasn't that bad. And then I turned off Antichrist because I really wasn't liking it. But then I enjoyed Jack Builds a House, or The House That Jack Built.
The House That Jack Built. What's funny is like, I haven't watched The House That Jack Built. I wanted to watch it, but everyone that I talked to that watched it so far was like, it's too brutal. Like, I couldn't finish it.
It's a lot like Nymphomaniac, except for shorter, but I liked it more, and I was thinking, well, I guess just seeing a killer is more interesting to me because, I mean, I know I'm a virgin, but I've had sex, and it's like, I haven't killed someone, you know? It's like, it's more exotic, it's stranger. All the things she's saying, she's mostly showing, like, it's like they're maybe interesting for a second, and then you're like, oh yeah, I pretty much know what would happen here. It's like, it's not dramatic. There's no like, what's gonna happen here? It's like that's what part of it being like a list movie too. It's just boring. But at any rate, to me. So anyway, like he puts the coins in a glove, which I already was ahead of him on. Maybe I'm a sadist. It's like, I know what he's going to do with these coins. Anyway, he uses them in a glove to smack her around with. I thought he was maybe going to put them on a sock. Then he starts teaching her about knots. And This is where we see it's snowing. It's the holidays, and we see a snow plow out in the street. There's a lot of plowing in this movie. And she leaves Marcel at home, and he wanders out to when she goes to see Jamie Bell. She leaves her baby at home, and he wanders out into the freezing night in his PJs. And LaBouffe comes home and finds Marcel and gets him before he dies. And turns out it's Christmas. And this is where we get the Euros saying Happy Christmas, not Merry Christmas. What do you prefer, Happy Christmas or Merry Christmas?
I was raised by European people who say Happy Christmas.
Wow.
So I got sort of used to that. And then every time I would say like Happy Christmas, people would be like, you're being like pretentious, and like people don't say that. And like, so I guess I would say Merry Christmas just because I feel like it makes other people more comfortable.
Maybe I'll start saying Happy Christmas to make people uncomfortable. It's just saying Christmas in general is supposed to make people uncomfortable, but it doesn't. I don't feel like it really doesn't. It's one of those things like really conservative people like to get all up in arms about, everybody's saying happy holidays to avoid Christmas. But if you actually just go around saying Merry Christmas to people, nobody's like,
No, dude, I feel like my dad is like this hardcore, like atheist type of person. If you said Merry Christmas, he would probably be fine. But if you say like God bless you, it's like, don't say God bless you to me. And like, I'll always tell him, so corny. Like, who cares? You know what I mean? Like, if people say God bless you.
It's like, chillax, bro.
Yeah.
Cool off, Dad.
Cool off, totally.
She comes home and he's got the baby and he's all like, not too pleased. And he asks her if she prefers him to the other dudes. And she says yes. And he tells her again, if she leaves again that night, she'll never see them again. And as soon as he put this ultimatum to him, I knew what was going to happen. It's another thing where I was just like so bored because like, as soon as he says, I was like, okay, she's going to leave. Now let's wait for this to play out. And so yeah, she says goodbye to the baby and he makes it all sad. Well, it's sad anyway. And then she leaves them. And then she goes immediately to Jamie Bell's and kisses him. And he's in his office or apartment late Christmas night. So I started thinking maybe it was an apartment, but I thought first it was an office.
Yeah, I don't know. It feels like an office, but then like, yeah, I don't know.
Then he gives her a cat of nine tails for Christmas. He had her Christmas present there for her, and it has her name Fido like engraved on it or something. I was thinking this movie's a real Fido. And she wants his penis. She wants him to fuck her, and he refuses. That's against his rules, and she knows it. He has like a big rules that there's not going to be any kind of sex. And he's going to give her 40 lashes for her behavior. And like, he's giving her these lashes, so she figures out how to move her pelvis to masturbate on the phone book as she gets whipped. And this is where she finally has sensation again. After she leaves her family and does this, like, she was able to feel an orgasm here. And now we're back with Skarsgård. She says she hasn't seen her son since that night, and that Jerome ended up like putting Marcel in a foster home. He didn't want to raise him or deal with it either. And every month she puts 1,000 pounds into an account for Marcel, her son. And with the pounds, this is where I finally figured out it was England for the first time I was watching it. So then like Skarsgård has a cat flap in his apartment from a former cat. And that's where she brings up she forgot about the silent duck. So what Bell did was he put his hand inside her vagina shaped like a closed duck bill. And that's the silent duck. And then she tells about how she talked to a prostitute who talked about how masochists were the worst because they're so tough to please and they never like give you any thanks. And you have to do all the work. And she never went back to Kay, Jamie Bell, after that night with the silent duck and being able to get her orgasm. And Skarsgård tells her she still hasn't told him anything malicious. So now she tells him a flashback story when she was Stacey Martin and Jerome bought her a ring for like a bunch of money, and then she just threw it in a fire and told him to fish it out while she yells, Cinderella, Cinderella, at him. Do you remember this part?
Not really. Like, I definitely remember the part where she talks about how like masochists are like the worst and like the hardest to please and stuff. I don't really remember the part about throwing the ring in the fire.
And she's wearing a diamond necklace, and in present times as Joe while talking to Stellan Skarsgård, she tells him she can't remember who gave her the diamond necklace. And now Skarsgård digresses and talks about diamonds. But then we go to now, I guess because like a diamond refracts or reflects, like each one has a unique pattern for how it reflects things with reflections, which brings her to chapter 7, The Mirror. And here I had a thought about like, them comparing it to 1001 Nights, and I was thinking like the movie's kind of like the 1001 Nights in that the Arabian Nights is a story, or the 1001 Nights is a story told by this woman Scheherazade to put off her having sex and I think death with this sultan. Like every night she tells him a different story. And when the story pleases him, she can kind of go home and he goes to bed, and then she has to come back, and to distract him, she tells him another story every night. And so I started wondering if like she and Skarsgård were going to end up boning at the end. But anyway, so here's where her life is kind of starting to catch up with her lifestyle, because she masturbates and there's blood. And this is like the first time I think we've seen red in part 2, maybe. And the bleeding becomes more frequent. So she goes into a woman's office, and I guess this is her boss at work. And this lady tells her she's been hearing rumors about her promiscuity, and the boss demands she goes to therapy. I was wondering if she's working at a printing office still, I don't know. But like, yeah, she also said like something like the other women in the office are afraid like she won't be able to keep her hands off their men. And she's like, yeah, they're probably right. Then so she gets pregnant again. I guess she says she gave up birth control because she was afraid of getting pregnant. She kind of had like this weird reaction. And she just wants an abortion really bad. And she visits this psychologist, who I think was played by Oscar Schindler's wife in Schindler's List. And she goes, before you get an abortion, you have to visit a psychologist. Is that true in America? I think it may be.
No, I think like when you get an abortion in America, like I don't know, I've never had an abortion in true life. People will probably be like, you're lying.
No, you haven't had one this week.
But like I don't think so. I don't think you have to see like a psychologist or anything. I think like the rule is like you have to get an ultrasound in a lot of places, depending on like where you live in America.
I thought this was a thing.
Ultrasound, because people want to prevent you from getting an abortion because you see it in an ultrasound. Like, oh, it's a baby.
Oh. So she refuses to explain herself in this interview in order to pass the psychologist exam and get the abortion. She wants it so bad she won't even explain why she wants one or her lifestyle in order to get it. I was like, is she mentally challenged? Like, what is wrong with this woman? Like, all she has to do is like talk to this lady for 5 minutes and she gets what she wants. But instead, like, she just flips out and now she has to go home and make her own coat hanger abortion tool. And I was thinking, like, Joe in this movie doesn't seem smart enough to even do this. And they should have had a part where they, like, have her watching YouTube videos. Because she gets really, like, she doesn't just shove a coat hanger up herself. She gets really, like, into it. I was thinking, like, I was watching their show with Uma Thurman called Imposters. It was, like, on A&E or something. It was, like, or AMC. It was, like, some just cable show that you can watch it on Netflix. And this guy in the like first episode, he gets depressed after he gets love conned, and he starts watching YouTube videos on how to properly hang yourself at home to commit suicide and make the noose and everything. And I was thinking they should have had some where she like watches YouTube videos to like learn how to give herself the coat hanger abortion. And Uma Thurman kind of looked like Toni Collette in that show. At first I wasn't 100% sure.
Like, I don't know like what this time period is. Like maybe that will give you some indication of the time period, but like, yeah, maybe.
Oh yeah, they probably didn't have YouTube in this part.
Maybe there was like something of like the time period where you like weren't allowed to get an abortion under certain circumstances there. Like,
yeah, and that might be like a big code for people to be like, oh, I remember when this was like. That's a good point, Reno. Very good point. But I was thinking here that with the home abortion scene,
gonna be a home abortion scene in a lot of places probably, because like I know, like, I mean, not really, because like if you can just go to a different state.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
You know, like in Texas and stuff, you're really not allowed to get an abortion now. You can just travel to a different state, but like theoretically, there will be like coat hanger abortions.
Which, you know what that means. Next year at Sundance, we'll have the story of the road trip with the girl who needs the abortion.
There will be so much of that. There's going to be so much of that when it's bad. When it's like, dude, it's not that hard to not get pregnant, to be honest.
Yeah, especially with like all the stuff we have now. It's like,
I'm not saying like it's good to like, look, I feel like I'm not going to say I'm like no one's pro-abortion. No one is. Like, no one's pro-abortion. No one's like, I'm for that or something. It's like, but you know, I'm pro-choice in the sense that like I really am for like I'm very libertarian in the sense. Like I'm sort of a religious person, but I feel like I'm very libertarian in the sense where it's like if you want to get an abortion, you should be able to get an abortion. You should be able to do drugs. You should be able to do whatever you want. You should have like bodily autonomy. That's the thing I believe like above all else. But like you should.
I think I should decide what everyone's body's allowed to do.
Yeah, you should be able to decide. You should be the arbiter of what people should do with their body. You alone. That would be like the best way to decide it, probably. Yeah, everyone's gonna have you believe like you can't get an abortion, but you can't. You just cannot get an abortion in Texas. States. You have to go to a different state, but you can get an abortion still.
I was thinking this part where she gives herself the home abortion, which is quite graphic, that the clinical color palette of the movie kind of works against this scene because it makes it seem more like she's in a hospital or something. It's really clean. If like there was like some kind of grunginess to it, it might be even more like, you know, affecting or something.
Yeah, like I read this book. I think I talked about it last time I talked to you, but I read this book. It was called Heart of a Dog.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like in Heart of a Dog, you have like a lot of that stuff. Where it's
oh, wow.
He's this like doctor kind of guy, and he gives people like operations to so they can have kids and they can have sex like older than they are and stuff, and he like transplants like organs into them and stuff so they can be like virile into like old age and shit like that.
Oh, that explains the title.
Yeah, and like so that book has like a really interesting like color palette because it's weird. It's like antiseptic or something, but then there's also like a bunch of like rotting kind of like like stuff to like rotting, like where it's like people have like green hair and like green underwear and like shit like that, where there's like all these allusions to like rotting and like shit like that. But yeah, I feel like it's that kind of thing where it's like, yeah, you want something to be like, and this type of thing, like more like antiseptic or something.
Yeah, that's how it was here. Like, I felt like it could have been grungier to be more intense. But I also learned during this home abortion sequence that I'm not totally asexual.
So that's your thing, like home abortion.
Yes. So you know when adults are always cranky, like that people say like, you need to get laid, but she's always angry and always getting laid.
I think it's probably true. Like when people say like you need to get laid, not true. Getting laid doesn't make you happy. Like it doesn't make you happier. Like I think this all the time. Like it actually makes you sadder. Like
it does. It's a short-term fix. Like it puts the spring in your step for like a day, and then
this is what I realized in the year 2021. People will always say like, "Oh, you need to get laid. Like dick will make you happier." Like no, it doesn't. It does not make you happier. In fact, it makes you feel shittier. Not getting laid will make you happier. You should live like Morrissey and just like not have sex for like 20 years. That will make you happier. Drama of getting laid actually just makes you feel shittier and sadder.
Oh yeah, for sure.
That's my takeaway from 2021.
So here they have a big debate on an abortion, Stellan Skarsgård and Charlotte Gainsbourg. And I was thinking with this abortion debate, this movie could just not get any more entertaining. And we get another flashback for Christian Slater, where he and the daughter, they save some snails in the woods. And I made the note, this movie sucks ass. Then she goes to sex addiction therapy. So here we get where she tries to get clean. And this therapist insists on all these like PC terms for things of their group and stuff. And we get the story where this lady tells a story about like how she thought she could get clean from being a nymphomaniac or a sex addict by like just overindulging. And so she like had picked a time when like she stayed at home when her husband and kids left town for something, and she just like went to the beach and laid naked in a huge like pile of coal and let all these guys just come up and she called all the guys she had phone numbers of or something, and they all came and gangbanged her in public. And then and that was pretty crazy. And then after this group, the therapist tells Joe that things she can do is get rid of anything at home that reminds her of sex. And this therapist later, she was in another Neil Jordan vampire movie without Christian Slater called Byzantium. I also thought was another pretty good movie. But anyway, this was probably one of the best parts of Volume 2 was like the montage of Joe taking things, like removing things in her home that remind her of sex. Do you remember this? Where she's like covering up her mirror, covering up her window to the outside, the corners of her like sink and stuff, like putting tape or like things to make them less like jutting and things like just
well, I mean, like, I think that's like a thing where it's like, yeah, like sex addiction is like a joke. Like people say like sex addiction is fake, and like sex addiction is fake. Sorry, but it's fake. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's normal to want to like have sex all the time. Like I feel like sex addiction isn't the same as like heroin addiction or like being an alcoholic or something like that. Like I just don't feel like it's like the same thing. Like I feel like it's fake. Like I feel like it's a made up thing. And like, well, first of all, I feel like most like addiction is like made up, and like I'll probably get in trouble for saying that or something, but I feel like it's made up. Like I feel like rehab is made up. Like it's just a thing where you can like steal people's money. Like I'm not saying people aren't addicted to drugs or like whatever else, but it's like I don't think rehab like helps anyone.
Because she goes back to a group and she hasn't had sex in 3 weeks and 5 days, which are the Fibonacci numbers again. And she hallucinates here, seeing herself in a child as a child in the side, like behind all the people in the group. She sees like herself as a child. And this is like where the movie, to me, the movie just seemed really fake. Like she flips out here and starts yelling at the other people about how she's not like them and how her sex addiction isn't like the like overweight girl or like the girl in the coal, because the girl in the coal just wants like people to tell her she's attractive, and the girl like the overweight girl is just trying to fill herself with things because she feels like empty or something. And I was like thinking, and this kind of made me flip, like part of the reason this is boring is because I don't believe in Jo as a person. It's like she isn't giving me a view of humanity really that I believe in the way, like, because I can understand those other two women seem like real people in a way, or things people do, not so much like just trying to feel full because you always feel empty, but if you're like overweight and addicted to sex, it's because those are very easy ways to feel pleasure, physical pleasure. If you don't, maybe the only ways are through taste and sex, like to feel real physical pleasure, like without doing any work. And like if people will have sex with you, but like, so I was thinking about like the movie There Will Be Blood, and how like Paul Thomas Anderson movies sometimes, like I just don't buy them as being like about people or things people do. Like in There Will Be Blood, when his brother shows up and he's hanging out with the brother and stuff, and I was like, I just don't buy this as a thing that like reflects on human, like his, and at the end of There Will Be Blood, where he has the mansion after being so like kind of anti-mansion the whole movie, just all of a sudden he turns into William Randolph Hearst, and it's like, I just don't buy this as a dramatic depiction of a man. And that's kind of why like There Will Be Blood gets boring to me. And this movie too, I just don't buy it as a thing of a woman. And like how you're saying like sex addiction is fake, it started reminding me of things I do buy because they seem like they're like more like revolve around human characters. That Norm Macdonald joke about sex addiction where he's like, you know who the worst sex addict is my uncle Dave, because he's been married to the same lady for 80 years or something, you know? It's like that guy's a sex maniac. And I was like, yeah, that's a lot of truth to that. It's like you immediately just see the human truth. And I was also thinking about like Quentin Tarantino and how you were saying his movies like to you aren't good, but they're entertaining. And like I was like, I kind of think they are good because he kind of understands people. Like even in True Romance, in the True Romance when we talk about like the alternate ending of True Romance where Patricia Arquette is driving and thinking about like and cursing out Christian Slater and the things she says to herself about him. And I was thinking like, he at that point had never been in a relationship like that. And she's a total construct, this woman, Alabama, that Patricia Arquette plays. And yet the things she's saying to herself are the kind of things that as a 41-year-old man, I could totally see a person doing. He understands human behavior, and that's like, it holds your interest because the people behave like people, and you can like see yourself in observation in them. And the same, like, yeah, that Norm Macdonald joke is just like, here I just don't, it's like, here's a listing of things people do, but Jo herself just doesn't feel like, or even Stellan Skarsgård character, they don't feel like depictions of people you would actually ever meet, to me, at least. I don't know, I just don't feel human, or like I'm really learning anything that I couldn't read from like a list article.
I understand that. I think like at the end of the movie, like Stellan Skarsgård, like we'll talk about it at the end of the movie.
Sure. So she quits therapy. And this is where we get the part of her setting the car on fire outside the mansion with the talking heads burning down the house playing, which it was just so fun to like, that was a really good little moment, like just like really effective the way they filmed it and used the rock song. Once again, very on the nose, you're right, burning down the house when she's burning down her car, but it was like jarring and like, yeah, felt like a...
That's funny. Like, I feel like he uses music in like a funny way.
So now Dawn is kind of breaking through at Seligman's house, and she tells him there that she's like decided to make this break with, at this point, she tells him that in her life, after the therapy group, she decided to make a break with society and just embrace being like a dark person and join this dark nighttime society. And she says some bullshit about there being no in-between of nocturnal people and day people. And I was like, I don't even know what they're talking about anymore. Now she's like talking about James Bond, Ian Fleming, and says she loved to read Ian Fleming. It's like, I don't actually believe she liked Ian Fleming or James Bond either. And
well, does. I mean, who really loves? Maybe you do, but I don't think anyone really loves James
I don't know.
Bond. I mean, maybe
I know guys who love James Bond, for sure.
I don't know anyone. I mean, like, I want to love James Bond. Like, I'll say that, and I've said this before too, where I'm like, I would be like, in a weird way, people are like, what's like your dream movie to like direct or something? Like, in a weird way. It would be my dream to direct like a James Bond movie.
Well, when I was a little boy, like the James Bond movies super ignited a fantasy in me, but I've never actually seen a James Bond movie that I really liked.
I completely agree. Like, I feel the exact same way. It's like there is some foundation of something where you're like, this is like a thing that I like. There's like, yeah, it ignites like, that's the perfect way of putting it. It ignites like a fantasy in you, but like when you see like the reality of what people do with it, it like doesn't align with what you would like.
Yeah, maybe the books might have been better, but I have no idea. I've never read any of them. I bought one of the ones that wasn't by Ian Fleming, was by John Gardner when I was in second grade at the mall, and I never read it. I don't have it anymore. I might have picked it up and tried to rate it by this point, but I've never read one, so I can't say. So yeah, at this point, it just felt like the movie was talking more to be longer. And then so like here she sees a stain on the wall that looks like a gun to her. And we get the chapter 8, the gun. So I didn't know this one when I was watching the movie the first time, but you know, with the Fibonacci things, this will be the final chapter of the movie, thank God. So now she decides, she goes into like shady debt collecting, and she visits a man she says she's known about for a long time, and we don't know how she's knows him. She calls him L, and it's Willem Dafoe, and he's playing a most unexpected and really unbelievable shady debt collector. And kind of like, much like Jamie Bell seemed like a really unexpected polyamorous sadist character, you know? It seemed like the movie was really trying to be like, what would surprise people more than what would you actually see if you think about what you expect. So it's like Willem Dafoe's playing like a really cultured, arty, mild-mannered guy who's in charge of this like crime syndicate of debt collectors.
Well, and clearly a Lars von Trier just loves Willem Dafoe.
And I do too. Like Willem Dafoe's acting here is fantastic. Like I love Willem Dafoe.
I love Willem Dafoe. I love like John Malkovich. There's just like a few of those.
Oh yeah, Malkovich is great too. But I have a theory about Dafoe. Like to me, I think if you look at Willem Dafoe's IMDb, he's been in trillions of movies and some of them bad. But I think other than maybe like Robert De Niro, maybe even at this point more than Robert De Niro, I think that Willem Dafoe has been in more decent to good movies than almost any actor ever. It's like
he's just so crazy looking. Like he could play anyone. He could play anything.
I think it comes down to taste. I think he probably is a really intelligent guy and reads scripts and is like, you know what, this sounds fun to do. And he's like, he picks good movies. Like there were movies that resonate with me. Like he's been in a lot, like so many. Like I had an ex-girlfriend who thought,
like Willem Dafoe.
yeah, you can get tons of roles if you look like him.
Yeah,
you look odd.
Because you could play like anything because you just look so crazy.
And he stays so thin.
Yeah.
So he can sometimes play like a person with like sexual energy too, even though he looks like a demon or something. The same girl that likes Alexander Skarsgård, she was like, Willem Dafoe's your favorite actor. And I was like, no, he's not. She's like, every movie we watch has him in it. And I was like, oh, that's a like interesting point. I must really just like, I like the kind of movies he's in. So at any rate, like she gets a job. He tells her that she has her broad knowledge of men will be really good in this job to pressure men to pay. And he knows about her ways. So now we've moved into a crime movie. And much, much too late for it to do us any good. I love crime movies, but all I could think of now when she became a debt collector was that now the movie won't be over in the next 5 minutes. We'll have to have some kind of crime plot. So she uses her Jamie Bell skills to beat and tie up guy. She beats this guy in like his wine cellar, and she uses like people's like sexual things in order to torture them and stuff too, I guess. And so she meets this debtor with her thugs, and she can't read him sexually, like what would pain him. So what she does is like she takes his pants down, and she just starts telling stories and talking about stuff, his sex in different forms, to see what gets him hard. And finally, he gets hard for a pedophile fantasy. Ding! And he agrees to pay when he gets hard when she brings up pedophilia, and to like kind of like for some reason she gives him a blowjob after this. And I was thinking like, wouldn't that make his boner go down because she's an adult? Maybe not. One of the
it's hallucination.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe the assistant thugs should have kept telling him pedophilic fantasies so he could maintain his erection while he gets the blowjob from the adult woman. The way Charlotte Gainsbourg looks in this movie, I'm not sure I could maintain an erection. And let's see. So then this is where Seligman brings up Thomas Mann again for some reason. And, about people keeping their desires under control and just never giving vent to like their desires. And there were rumors about him being into boys, like little boys or young boys. And I read I was saying I read Death in Venice. And that's a story about a dying dude who's obsessed with a little boy's vitality and kind of follows him around Venice. And I don't know much about Thomas Mann, so I won't speculate. But I remember reading that story and being like, this is kind of creepy.
Yeah, I mean, like, to be fair, I feel like most, like, old, rich people, like, look at what's his name? Like, the stupid guy, the PayPal guy.
Well, I don't know.
Palantir guy. No, like, what the fuck is the guy's name? He's, like, the PayPal Palantir guy. Oh, Peter Thiel. It's like these people like literally get like injected with like young people's blood. They're like billionaires and they get like injected with like the blood of like young people.
That's what they're all doing at Bohemian Grove.
Dude, yeah, it's like, I mean, it's not even like a sexual thing per se. It's just like they're obsessed with like not dying or something, or obsessed with their own mortality or something. So who knows? Like that's a fine line between that and pedophilia.
Now after this, she has a meeting with Willem Dafoe, and he tells her she's aging and should find a successor in the debt collecting business, some kind of crown princess. And he tells her how to find one. And he says, find one as a kid and ingratiate herself as kind of a pseudo parent. And he tells her about a poor girl with a deformed ear who's 15. And Joe gets into supporting this kid emotionally as an athlete. She plays, I forget what's, volleyball or something. And Joe goes to her games. And so then now we have Slater back. We're talking about the soul tree stuff with Little Joe. And Joe says, so the trees also look like what's that?
No, I just dropped my cup.
Oh, no.
But it didn't spill.
Oh, nice.
I broke my laptop one of the times that we were talking. Not this time. This is my desktop. I need to not break it. I need to not spill my drink this time.
Very nice.
Yes, very good.
I may have footage of you doing that.
It's horrible.
I may have the exact moment you break your laptop on video.
Trauma. It like is truly traumatizing. My laptop is broken. It's traumatizing. But anyway.
Little Joe tells Christian Slater that the naked trees also look like human souls. And Slater finds his soul tree and shows it to her. And then Joe tells this girl, I think his name P or something if memory serves. Yeah, P. She calls her P, that she has never found her own soul tree. So at some point, this girl comes of age, P, and moves into Joe's house. And Joe's pussy at this point is too gross for her even to masturbate. So she has no sex, and she starts having abstinence symptoms of fever and cramps and things. And at this point, the little girl, P, or I guess now 18 or something, she tells her she loves her amorously. And we cut back to Joe with Seligman, and she asks if she should get this story over and done with. And I was thinking, please, yes. So the little girl sees Joe's vagina, and she gets naked and comes on to her and starts sucking on her boobs. And of course, if you're going to get aroused by seeing this kind of cute girl sucking on Charlotte Gainsbourg's boobs, they cut immediately to Joe's gross, bloody vagina. You can't get any kind of pleasure from Volume 2. And she finally tells this little girl about her work and how she's supposed to recruit the girl. And I was thinking that even the little girl P is a much better actor than Gainsbourg in the movie to me. And then the girl insists on joining her in the work, like when she was supposed to recruit her for the work, but Joe says like, no. And she's like, but how do you keep, and then she tells Seligman like, how do you keep a wave upon the sand? So P starts riding along on missions, and she learns to produce to learn. And then they're on like this one collection of a debt, and P produces a gun to threaten the debtor when she thinks that Joe's methods aren't working. And that pisses Joe off, and Joe demands the gun from her, and Joe sees that the gun is loaded. And then she puts Chekhov's gun in a closet. And I was thinking, I hope that Chekhov's gun someday gets used to kill Schrodinger's cat. Are you more tired of hearing about Chekhov's gun or Schrodinger's cat?
I'm more tired of hearing about Schrodinger's cat, for sure, culturally.
So P's job is to drive them to the debtors' places. And so they end up, at Jerome's house. And Joe doesn't want to be a part of this. She starts having feelings as they approach Jerome's house. And she tells P she wants her to do it alone. She doesn't want her to hurt or destroy anyone or anything inside. Just offer him a reasonable payment plan. This is where we have a new Jerome that's not Shia LaBeouf. It's a guy named Michael Pass. And I've never heard of this guy or seen him before. And he doesn't look like an older version of Shia LaBeouf to me either. I was really tripped out by this. I was like, I guess, maybe they felt like they needed to switch it up, or maybe Shia LaBeouf busy, and couldn't meet the schedule, or maybe I don't know, because I almost felt like they could have just put some older age stuff on. They could have just aged Shia LaBeouf up a little, and he could have played 40. It's like, is Shia LaBeouf that much younger than me? I guess this was an older movie.
Shia LaBeouf is probably my age or a little bit younger, would be my guess. I don't know. So he's probably 35.
Put some glasses on him. At any rate, it doesn't matter. We're used to seeing people change and stuff in the movie. It wasn't that big. And also, we're also used to the movie not really trying to sell us on it as a story that we're supposed to really get involved in, which is odd.
But this is also 2013, so
yeah, he was younger. That's why I was thinking that too.
Probably in 2013. God, I don't know. It's not old. 13.
Yeah, but just based on how we've seen him in the movie, I think they could have made you with some kind of just light makeup or something, convince you he was 40, put a little gray in his hair. But at any rate, so seeing Jerome in her arouses feelings in her. She's like, "Is it love? Was it love? I don't know, but it was stronger than I would have liked." So then we find out that the alley that Seligman found her in the beginning on her back is on her way home from Jerome's house. And because she goes home and leaves P at Jerome's. And P comes home later and she tells her the mission was a success. And so P is sent on all the missions to collect from Jerome. And Joe will stay home now playing solitaire with her mother's cards. And she starts feeling jealousy for the first time in her life during those hours. When P leaves, to go get the last payment from Jerome, she doesn't kiss Joe goodbye. Joe looks like an awful person to kiss. This made me think we have a mutual friend that I had a crush on, and I think we used to joke that maybe she might have an awful mouth to kiss. She likes to booze and smoke cigarettes a lot. Maybe doesn't seem like a...
I guess to happen?
Yeah. We'll say her name.
Nord?
I think we used to joke maybe she might be a really bad person to kiss.
Right, though, but you slept with her in life.
Yeah, but before that, before this happened,
slept with her in life, actually.
She actually wasn't awful to kiss at all. It was nice. I don't know if you remember that, but I was like, you agree?
Agree.
Yeah, it was actually nice. But anyway, so P doesn't even come home after the last payment from Jerome, and I wonder where she could be. Joe goes and finds her spirit tree in the woods now, and it's a really bent tree. And so P is now Jerome's girlfriend, and Joe decides to kill them with the gun. And so she kind of sets it up and waits for them in that alley. And when she tries to shoot them, the gun doesn't fire. And Jerome beats her up and then has sex with P in front of her in the Fibonacci style, 3 in the vagina and 5 in the anus. So after he has sex with P in front of her, P straddles Joe's face and urinates on it. And we go back to Seligman and Joe. Seligman points out that she never racked the gun, and that even in Ian Fleming or something, she should have known you have to rack the gun from the movies and stuff, and that's why the gun didn't fire. And then we get this montage that reflects back on her story and shows these things that happen throughout the film. And now Sarsgaard gives her a breakdown on his take on the story. And do you remember this? How he feels about the story?
I don't really remember how he feels in the story. I just remember like the end of the story where he tries to have sex with her, which is like super funny because it's like, of course, that's what you would do.
Oh, yeah. So he gives her this breakdown about how a man wouldn't have been made to feel guilty for behaving as she did. And he's just like saying all this stuff. Like, it's like kind of, I feel like it's kind of supposed to blow your mind, like putting a man in her place and being like, oh, wow, we would have felt differently about everything we saw if it had been about a dude. And I was thinking like, maybe other people would, but I sure wouldn't have. I would have also thought the guy was a huge asshole. And I feel like the things that Stellan Skarsgård's saying, like, women have been saying for, like, decades anyway. It's kind of like that when I watched Manderley, I felt like he was making a movie about racism and slavery as if, like, America hadn't been making slavery and racism movies for, like, 50 years. Like, he'd never seen one and was like, I just thought of all this.
Someone has said, like, you know, everyone thinks, like, everyone is as, like, race retarded about America as, like, America is about it. You know, and, like, I feel like, yeah, like, of course, like, not every single person, like, feels the same way about, like, race as, like, Americans feel about race or something.
I just felt like he was just discovering, like, racism and was going to tell us about it. It's like, dude, we've been doing this for a while. That's kind of how I felt like he was with feminism here. Like, he's like, guess what, everybody? We don't judge men for walking out on their families and having sex with women. It's like, yeah, I kind of do, sir. Kind of do.
Like, I felt like a little bit different about it where it's like, I don't know, like, I feel like it's kind of more like self-aware where I feel like, I don't know, I feel like this movie kind of reminds me of like Paul Verhoeven movies or something where like RoboCop or something, talking about like violence in America or something. Like, I feel like it kind of reminds me a little bit of like the same thing. Like, I feel like it's like a little bit more self-aware and a little bit more funny.
Oh, like it's supposed to be comical?
Yeah. Like, I feel like it's a little bit more funny and self-aware than like
I just found it like trite. Yeah, my bad.
But, you know.
But a lot of times I think that Paul Verhoeven's points are just like lame too and trite. But I do like RoboCop. It's just, RoboCop makes me laugh just because of the
I feel like RoboCop is fun and like funny. And I feel like most of his movies are like fun and funny. Like, I feel like RoboCop is funny. I'm not as much of a fan as, what's the movie everyone loves that I don't really love?
Basic Instinct?
No. I like Basic Instinct, they like Showgirls, but like, what's the other one? The one that there was like a TV show of in like 60s or
Hollow Man?
No. I actually haven't seen Hollow Man, but like
I like Total Recall.
Not Total Recall. I can't think of what it is, but it's like the one with like the space.
Oh, I didn't like Starship Troopers. I think that's
Starship Troopers.
I don't really like Starship Troopers.
I'm not a huge fan of Starship Troopers.
But
like,
see, that one has a lot of that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like Starship Troopers is like self-aware and stuff too, but like not a movie that I loved personally. And I love Paul Verhoeven. I just am not a huge fan of Starship Troopers, which like I actually do really like the first part of Nymphomaniac, but the second half I just feel like is like a little too heavy-handed and like over the top.
Yeah, the second time I watched the movie to make notes, I used the speed up the movie function on VLC to watch the movie.
Yeah, it's just like a little much. It's like, we get it.
Even the first part was better sped up.
But that's why I think it's kind of funny in the same way. Like, it's like when you get to the end joke where like he tries to have sex with Joe, like it's funny to make someone watch like a 5-hour movie to just get to this like punchline of this like incel trying to have sex with this woman. Like,
well, here also like we know we're at the end, and so I was thinking like the gun hasn't gone off. We've got Chekhov's gun. And so I thought maybe he was going to kill her, but I didn't know what was going to happen. I was like, something's going to happen with that gun, though. At any rate, also, you know, like that movie Manderley, it starred Bryce Dallas Howard, and she's Ron Howard's daughter. And both of them have this thing where they seem like the nicest people on earth. They seem like super happy and just super like nice, genuinely nice, good people who you would like want to have over for dinner and just hang out with. But they, like, anytime they come out with a movie, either of them, I just, like, have no faith that will be anything but super boring.
Like, yeah, I do feel like this movie's kind of, like, self-aware or something. I feel like the end, like, joke and punchline is funny, but, like, still, like, the second half of the movie, to me, was like, you could skip it.
I also think you just had a real hard time wrapping up the movie.
Yeah.
Like, figuring out how to wrap it up. Like, let's turn it into a crime melodrama. It's like, well, yeah, it's great. It's like, it's kind of like, you know, like Noah Baumbach always has trouble wrapping up those movies, but he won't like use a cheat like that or something. Whatever. This movie wasn't really trying to sell you on it.
Well.
What's that?
I said most movies have trouble like wrapping it up.
If they're trying to be like about something that isn't a plot, especially. This movie was like certainly not really trying to even sell you on its characters as being people. It was trying to be like all kind of meta.
Yeah, I feel like he was just trying to make a movie to like troll people about how he's a misogynist or something. And it's funny in that respect. Like, just like I feel like Joker is funny in the sense that like whoever the guy is that made Joker, he's the guy who directed like the Hangover movies, and like he was like, yeah, like you can't make a comedy in this day and age because like people will like crucify you for trying to make something funny, but like I can make Joker, like, and I feel like that makes me appreciate the movie in like this weird context, but I don't necessarily like the movie, which I feel like in some ways like I feel the same way about this movie. The first half I do like from like a filmmaking perspective, but like the second half I think is like sort of funny, but I don't really love it.
Let's see. So she's now like wrapped up her story, and she's decided that her thing now, if she tells him about, she's told him all this and he's learned, he's listened, she's like maybe the first friend she's ever had in her life. I was thinking, what about B? But anyway, like maybe she meant as a man or something. Now she decides that she's going to give up her addiction, and she's just going to like try to like use self-control and just not have sex anymore. And then she decides to go to sleep, and he like leaves her to go to bed. But then as soon as she's like supposedly asleep, he comes in on her sleeping, and he gets his cock out, and he starts touching his cock, and he's going to expose her and feel her up. And then she wakes up and is offended at being raped, which I don't know if you would get offended by being raped. I might. So then she shoots him to death and leaves. And then we get Hey Joe as performed by Gainsbourg. I didn't think her Hey Joe was that bad.
There's so many covers of Hey Joe, but like I think that's like another funny thing about the movie too, is it's like that's like another thing where it's just like, yeah, like women once you get to a certain age, like that's like the ultimate like misogyny. Like people are always like, yeah, like inferring that like a Lars von Trier is a misogynist, and like that's like the ultimate misogyny. Like as old as you get, like once you're over a certain age, men don't want to sleep with you or something, and like your whole like thing, like it's over, and like, you know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, like this guy tries to fuck her even as she's like an old lady or something, and like I think it's like funny or something, but like yeah, to make, and I think like making people watch like a 5-hour movie to get to that punchline or something is like funny, but it's, yeah, you got to watch a 5-hour movie to get there.
I started making my own list. It didn't quite get to Fibonacci levels, but I was thinking of what things I would rather do than watch Nymphomaniac a third time. One would be not kill myself. Two would be, oh wait, that's going too far. I was like, maybe I'd rather rape my grandmother. And I don't mean the one who's alive either.
Lies.
So anyway, and like the house that Jack built, the character Jack, he was really into those poems, The Lamb and the Tiger by William Blake. And that was
and I haven't watched The House That Jack Built, but I know that like that's another thing that like people like criticize him because like his movies are so like violent and like,
oh yeah,
so
this is a movie you would expect to be violent. It's about a serial
it's
killer.
like another like kind of like play on that or something, like making something that's like unwatchable because it's so sick and violent or something.
It wasn't more violent than other serial killer movies. It was weirder, but it really wasn't more violent. I would say that's kind of it wasn't like NC-17 or crazy or anything like that. I've definitely seen more brutal
My dad
movies.
was like, I had to stop watching it because it was so violent and gross. Like I couldn't do it.
Oh wow. Yeah, I was like not.
But he
it
like
felt way more
Lars von
tame.
Trier.
It felt like Lars von Trier doing a commercial movie to me. Even though I know that it wasn't that huge a moneymaker, I guess. But
I love Matt Dillon.
Me too.
I
love Matt Dillon.
Ex-boyfriend that reminds me of Matt Dillon, who looks just like Matt Dillon. And so like, I don't know what like precipitated it. I don't know if it's like, I have this like fascination with Matt Dillon because my ex-boyfriend reminds me of Matt Dillon, or like the other way around.
I like Matt Dillon because he's really good at playing dumb characters, and I feel like that's hard to do in the movies because he's probably not a dumb guy at all, but it's like he can play a guy who's dumb really well. His character in The House Jack Built isn't that dumb. But like in Something About Mary, I thought they should have given him an Oscar.
He's so good in it. But yeah, he's hot. I feel like Matt Dillon's hot. Like he's so,
he's super handsome.
I love Wild Things. It's one of my favorite
aged well too.
Time. It's so fun and funny, but
I'm not as big on that movie. But once again, he's good in it.
I love that. I love Wild Things.
Speaking of movies that are really brutal, though, the guy that made Wild Things is the guy that made that movie, Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer.
I've seen that movie too. I actually have seen Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer.
That's a brutal movie. That's one where it's like, you might want to turn this off. I think that's one of the scariest movies I've ever seen. Because it feels also not just brutal, real. Like, it's like, this is what serial killers and mass murderer people really are like. They're like idiots most of the time. They're not like some criminal mastermind most of the time. It's like some guy like Henry.
I went through this period when I was like, I don't know, in my early 20s or something, where I'd just do like shitload of drugs and like sleep with weird guys. And like I would come home and like watch movies like Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer, or like, you know that like video of like Bud Dwyer. Do you know who Bud Dwyer is? The guy in Congress who like shot himself.
Yeah. I think in high school I might have seen that video at somebody's house on the internet, like in the early.
Yeah, I would like watch Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer and like watch the Bud Dwyer suicide video like over and over.
Wow.
And spoilers.
When I was in my early 20s, would just cringe to admit that that's like what I would do.
Yeah, like I'm not a person who really likes like stuff like that. And I remember like, well, I like Henry Portrait of the Serial Killer just because it's like, to me feels like, I don't know, like something kind of a vital movie in a way. There's some kind of like, it's probably, I don't know, the acting is good and stuff. I don't know, I like that movie, but like the Bud Dwyer the death video, where like my friends, I was at a friend's house and a bunch of people were over there, a bunch of friends, and somebody put it on and I was like, I knew immediately this is not for me. Like they were all like, play it again. And I was like, no, I don't need to see that. I just looked away after the second one.
It's super messed up. And like now I'm just like, dude, that's super messed up. But like when I was like in my early 20s, like I would like watch that shit like again and again and again and again. Like just like, I don't know, like I was like going through like a period in my mind where it's like, that was just like, I don't know, that would like strike a chord with fear or something.
I wondered how Lars von Trier thought up Melancholia, Antichrist, and Nymphomaniac, because I looked into it a little bit, and he got the inspiration for the entire trilogy the day after renting, you guessed it, The Bridges of Madison County.
Are you serious?
No, I made that up.
I was gonna say, like, why is like Bridges of Madison County? Do you know that I have Bridges of Madison County? I have the book.
Oh, the book. Yeah, no, I did not know that. I think my mom read it. I know my mom read it at some point. I don't know if my dad did too. I don't know what she made of it. I think she probably saw the movie just after she read the book to know.
I've never read it, but I have the book. I have a hard copy of it.
Have you? I tried watching the movie just last weekend. I was going to bring this up on the show if I watched it, because I was with some friends like that in like a Airbnb, and it was on cable after I watched Driving Miss Daisy. I'd never seen it, and after it, Bridges of Madison County came on. I made it like 5 minutes in and was like, oh man, this is boring the hell out of me.
Yeah, no, I didn't see it in the 90s because I was like super young, and like as an older person, I'm just like, no, thank you. I'm not going to watch this.
Yeah, no thanks.
I have watched Driving Miss Daisy probably as an adult, but like not Bridges of Madison County, and I probably never will. But
I had never seen it. That was my first go round.
People tell me I look like Jessica Tandy.
She was, I mean, I don't know if I must have seen her in older movies, but I don't really remember any. But I thought, like, as an old lady in Bridges of Madison County, I was like, you could be a much worse looking old lady. I also thought, I know people like to make fun of Dan Aykroyd a lot because he's gone a lot of years without being funny.
I told you I like think Dan Aykroyd is so attractive.
Oh, you said when he was young, yeah, he was hot. We did talk about this. Yeah, and I agree. He was like a handsome younger guy. He's
like one of my top 10 like hottest guys that's like a younger person.
I also think he's just kind of good. Like, it's like I agree he's been gone a long time without actually being funny in something, but in Bridges of Madison County, I was like, I can understand why people liked him in this movie in the time, and I feel like the backlash on Dan Aykroyd actor is kind of unwarranted. Like, he actually is good.
And he was so hot as looking young guy. He really, truly was.
Yeah, in the old 70s SNL, he was a good looking guy. He and Chevy Chase were both real handsome. Like, tall, thin, handsome guys.
Not a fan.
Yeah.
Dan Aykroyd, for sure.
Yeah, the old SNL, I think we talked about this, was just basically sold on Chevy Chase as sexy. It was like season 1 of SNL, that was the theme.
I feel like I'm like a fair blonde, and so like other fair blonde, I'm just not into, maybe.
Yeah. He's like tall. Do you have any more thoughts on Nymphomaniac?
I don't, except to say that, yeah, I was like a huge fan of it when we saw it, when it came out. I do like it. like especially volume 1.
Well, let's go to the Slater Rater. All right, on a scale of 1 to 10, what do you give the movie Nymphomaniac?
I'll say an 8.
Wow. I'm going to go with a 2.
Wow.
I knew we'd have a good disagreement on this one.
Yeah.
We've had complaints that we agree too much on the ratings. And I was like,
Well,
I think we got a good one coming up.
Not on this one.
No. On a scale of 1 to 10, what do you give Christian Slater's performance?
I'll say a 6.
I'm going to go with a 7. The accent's bad, but everything else I thought was pretty good.
Yeah.
On a scale of 1 to 10, what would you give his hunkiness?
I think he's a very hunky, actually, in Nymphomaniac, because he's like an old daddy, and that's kind of my thing. So I'm going to say an 8.
Wow. Wow. I'm going to go
like
low
my
on this.
type.
I'm going to go with a 4 again. He's not a bad looking guy, but I wouldn't say he's hunky in this to me, but he's certainly not he's not unhunky in any way. Yeah, that's another good disagree. What about on a scale of 1 to 10, how much more Christian Slater would you have liked in the movie?
Oh, that's a tough one.
This is a tough one.
I feel like I would like to see more, but like also like the scenes that he's in are super brutal. Like he's like getting his ass wiped and he's like dying.
Yeah, I'm
like,
talking about trees.
You know, yeah. So
Of all the movie's digressions, the walks in the woods. Wah, wah, wah.
We have like a weird rating system for this one.
Yeah, it's -10 is the maximum more Christian Slater you could want to see.
Okay.
And 0 is the right amount.
Okay, so I'll say -5.
I'm going to go with the same. Explain your answer. Oh, yeah, it kind of did.
Yeah, no, I think it's like hot that Christian Slater's like a hot daddy in this movie. So that's like my thing. Like I didn't have a dad, so I'm like always looking for like a hot daddy kind of character. So I'm for any like daddy character in this movie, and he's like definitely like a daddy. So that's my explanation.
Mine would be for the 5 is that I love Christian Slater. He's not in a lot of the movie, but the scenes with him aren't my favorite scenes in the movie at all. He's not in my favorite parts. He's kind of emasculated, sensitive dad. Not that fun. But his acting was good. So like, it's like, yeah, I would like more, but not maximum more.
Yeah.
I think that's going to give us like somewhere in the F range, probably. I'm always wrong about these.
Probably right. I've had like 10 drinks. 20. A lot. I started drinking at like 3:30. It's like 10:30. I've been drinking for a long time.
That's good. You've been cogent.
That's good. Especially because, like I said, it's like dark passenger kind of drinking. Like, it's not the kind of drinking where you're like, oh, I'm drinking because it's like a fun. Like I'm drinking not in a fun way.
It's not good. I realized on Thanksgiving at my buddy's like how little I drink because like 2 drinks at his place with him mixing them and I was like smashed. And I was like, oh, I'm really not drinking a lot at home because I'm never like this.
I don't. What's funny is like, okay, so once again, I said like this year. So this is like something I want to talk about a little bit. It's the year of 2021. I didn't drink much prior to 2021, like especially in 2020, like the whole COVID year. I didn't drink at all. Like I did not drink. I lost 50 pounds during COVID.
Wow.
I took I lost a lot of weight during COVID. I just jogged and didn't do shit and I didn't see anyone and then like it was super good for me. And then in 2021, since I was such a recluse, like 2021 was like my non-recluse year. Like I like partied and drank a ton and like did all this stuff and like it's super interesting because like it wound up being like a super good professional year for me. 2021, I had a lot of great professional stuff happen. Like I got my dream job in 2021 and like it was a good year for me in that sense. Personally, not such a good year.
Wow, so I think I've drank more this year too than I have like maybe in many years past.
Yeah, I drink more in 2021 than I certainly have in many years past. Like in many years past, I hardly drink at all.
Me
like,
too.
I've always been a bit of a recluse, like even prior to COVID. And then like after COVID, it just made me have this thing where I was like, fuck it. Like I'm going to like go and like have a super fun time. And like I traveled and like slept with a bunch of dudes and just like,
so I wouldn't even allow myself like one drink alone unless I was really like celebrating an accomplishment or something like at home. But now it's like I have a drink alone like a lot.
No, agreed. Like well, I don't drink alone a lot, but like I socialize like a lot more. So like I drink a lot more because I socialized a lot more in 2021.
And I did
like,
that when I socialized too. I drank more. Yeah, that was the thing too. Like it's like my parents drink, but not like to excess. They just like they're big time casual drinkers, and I hanged out with them more. So like I always will drink with them and just other people too. Yeah, just always like having a beer or having a drink like it became a lot more normal to me this year.
Yeah, I didn't.
Routine.
I never drank like prior to 2021. Like I literally hadn't drank. I mean, like, I never drank, like, prior to that at all. And, like, this year I was just like, fuck it, I'm going wild. Like, I, like, didn't go out. And, like, what's weird is, like, I didn't go out, like, prior to 2020, like, either. Like, prior to COVID, I didn't really go out either. But it was more just, like, I didn't go out because I didn't want to go out. It was, like, my choice or something. And then, like, in 2020, I was like, it wasn't my choice. Like, I wanted to go do stuff. Like, I talked to... can bleep this out or not put this in the episode, but like I talked to George about this.
Nice.
And I was like, yeah, like it was crazy. Like I want to go, like I just want to go to Lowe's and buy light bulbs and I can't or something. Because like everything was like shut down here and it's you can't do anything. Like you can't go get light bulbs and like it sucks. And like it was just like I'm such a recluse that like I don't even do shit like that. And, like, I don't even miss doing stuff like that. Or sometimes like, dude, I miss like going to buy light bulbs and like it's super funny because like yeah, I was such a recluse and then like this year I was just like fuck it. Like I was so crazy and I just went so off and like yeah, like just did a bunch of stuff I wouldn't normally do. Like I slept with like a bunch of people and like had like crazy just like I'm gonna like party and drink like a teenager and like I had like a teen year.
Well, I was poor. I'm very poor and like so I still have like I still use coin-operated laundry machines in my apartment building. And when they had the coin shortage during COVID, I was like, damn. So what I did is I ordered a bunch of socks and underwear. So I have like 1 trillion pairs of socks and underwear now, like that I got on eBay.
Yeah, like so in the middle of 2020, like my dog died.
Oh.
Yeah, and it was like super sad because I was like, oh, my dog died. And that was like a big thing that like kind of kept me going through COVID because I was like, I can go for jogs and stuff. And so I was like, I got another dog because I was like, this is too sad if I don't have another dog. So I got this dog. And then like weirdly, I met like a bunch of people through having this dog and like going to dog parks because that's like the only thing that you could do in COVID. And then like I met some people through like family friends were like, cause yeah, like I lost all this weight during COVID. I lost like 50 pounds and people were like, I gained about like 10 pounds back or something, which I'm like, I need to lose that back because like, yeah, I've just been like drinking. That's the thing. And like, I say this, it's like men are horrible influences. Like they just want to drink like 300 calorie beers. Like you can't hang out with men. So like I just have like become like back to being a recluse because I'm like I gotta lose like 30 pounds.
I made a terrible mistake like with COVID, like where I got fat or not fat, like but I gained a bunch of weight like fast, like right before COVID the shutdown happened. Like it's like I was like fuck, now I can't lose it.
Yeah,
like,
no, I lost a bunch of weight before COVID. And then like kind of during COVID. And then like after I gained 10 pounds because socializing just makes you gain weight. Like people are like, yeah, let's drink 300 calorie beers and gross food. And like, I'm not a big like social person. So I actually gained weight after COVID. Like I feel like most people gained weight during COVID, but I actually lost quite a lot of weight during COVID and then and before. And then I gained a little bit of weight like post COVID because I was like socializing too much. And now that I have like kind of a fancy job, I'm like, oh, I have to like hang out with a bunch of like fancy rich people and I can't be like a fat fuck, you know, for that. So
sure you can.
I really have to like, lose a little bit more weight for that. So I can like go be like my best self for my job. So I have like,
you want to like, for me, it's like, I want to look like a go-getter.
Yeah, no. And like, that's my experience is like, for the most part, I'm like, I over socialize. And now I need to like focus on my job and be thinner, which like I'm thankful because I'm still 40 pounds down from what I was.
Oh, so there you go. Yeah, I was like, you don't look big.
So I'm still quite thinner. Like I was fat as fuck before COVID. and lost quite a lot of weight and then only gained 10 pounds.
A month before COVID started, after Valentine's Day, I bought all these Valentine heart chocolate boxes. I bought like 9 of them on discount and was eating like one a day. And like for, like 9 days straight. And then they shut down all the gyms and stuff. And I was like, George, not a good move, Oswald.
No, but you look great, I think.
Well, now it's been a long time after that. I know you're really busy these days. Are you reading anything?
Yes, I have been in this book club because I was like, I have to start reading. I'm becoming a complete fucking don't read at all. So I joined this book club that's short books. So yeah, I read My Life of a Dog and now I'm reading My Life by Anton Chekhov. I'm reading short novels.
I've never read much Chekhov. I have some I haven't read. Maybe I'll check that out soon.
So yeah, I'm easing myself back into reading novels and I like Russian literature. So I've been easing myself back into Russian lit that's short. But I force myself to read because I go and talk to people about books that are under 200 pages.
Ooh, that's nice.
Yeah, so that's what I've been doing lately. So yeah, I'm reading My Life by Anton Chekhov at the moment.
I'm reading 2 Samuel, and I've been reading about David and Bathsheba. Now they've had Solomon.
I'm a big Bible fan. I don't know if we've talked about this here or otherwise, but I was raised very religious. So I have a biblical name, obviously.
But yeah, you have a biblical name, Reno.
No, you can but I have a biblical name. I was raised super, super Catholic. So recently, I've gotten super into this and stuff. But you have a super biblical name too, obviously.
Yes.
I don't know if you were named because of a biblical name.
Yes, I was.
I went to catechism and all that stuff. I was raised super, super Catholic. So I've been super into biblical stuff my entire life. What's funny is when I was a kid, I went to Bible study and I was always the person that was going against the Bible study. The Bible study teacher would, because my dad's a super crazy atheist, but my mom was raised super religious. I went to Catholic school and stuff, and I grew up with her parents. So I would go to Bible study and test everybody. She would be yeah, so this person and that person lived to be 800 years old. And I was people don't live to be 800 years old. You know that. People don't live to be 800 years old. And she would be yeah, back in the day, they didn't get diseases, so they would live to be 800 years old. And I'd be that's not true. They didn't have antiseptics. They didn't have antibiotics. So they did not live to be 800 years old.
When you read, what was I reading this year? I've started reading the Bible this year. I've gone to 2 Samuel. It's in Exodus and Leviticus and stuff, when they're giving all the laws to the Israelites, all God's laws and stuff, a lot of them seem based around the idea that they don't have antiseptics and things. They're here's a good way not to die. It's don't have sex with a woman on her period. And you're why not? And you're oh.
I have a whole entire cool blanket that someone gave me. That's a Leviticus blanket. That's
Ooh.
A Moloch blanket. It's so cool because I was so obsessed with Leviticus.
So people talk about the 10 Commandments, but there's so many commandments. Here are 10 and here's 1,000 more right after it.
Leviticus is the abortion one where people talk, or Moloch is the abortion one where people say don't sacrifice your children to Moloch. Yeah. The abortion one. And so I was obsessed with that because I think it's so funny. I'm super religious, but not in a typical way. I guess. Someone made me this blanket that's a Moloch blanket and it's so cool. But I would always
Moloch blanket.
Yeah, it's a Moloch blanket. It's an old, super crazy, depiction of Moloch.
You know who got caught in a Moloch net
was your children to Moloch. It's super cool.
Tom Cruise got caught in a Moloch in that movie, Mission Impossible.
Moloch. It's crazy. That's what people say. That's the abortion one.
Ah.
People say that's why you're not supposed to have an abortion. It's because don't sacrifice your children to Moloch. It's a metaphor for abortion, which is obviously not true. Like they're obviously being completely literal. And they just mean like, don't sacrifice your children to Moloch.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm like a super religious person, but like not in this like weird Catholic or like Old Testament kind of like don't sacrifice your children to Moloch kind of way. Like I just think like I was dating this guy and like he was like talking to me and he was like, I was telling him, I was like, well, you have to be beholden to something. And he was like, why can't you be beholden to yourself? And I was like, because that's obvious.
The idea is that something bigger than yourself. Somewhere to get
like,
comfort from.
I don't know what to tell you. You know what I mean? Like, obviously you can't be like beholden to yourself. Like, I was like, try to be beholden to yourself. Like, just try to lose weight or try to do anything. Just being like beholden to yourself. Like, it doesn't work.
I came across a crazy thing in the Bible yesterday, I think, no, maybe it was like a week ago or something. I was reading 1 Samuel. You think like with the Old Testament is crazy where like God doesn't say he's the only God and stuff. He just says like, have no other gods before me. And you can like interpret it to say that he just like was saying he's the only God and didn't want to blow people's minds too far or something. And like, you know, it's just a lot to get across. But in 1 Samuel, there's a part where like Saul goes to a witch and has a medium and she conjures the spirit of Samuel and Samuel talks to him through a witch.
Yeah, like, there's a shit ton of stuff like that. Like Moloch is like, yeah, like a fucking beast that like people like some weird witch god that people sacrifice their children to or something, which like goes to show you like it's just written of the time or something.
Yeah, because when I was asking about my dad, I was talking to him about this. I was like, in Exodus, very famously, there's the part where Moses turns his staff into a snake, and then the Pharaoh's just like, my guys can do that, and they turn their staffs into snakes. And then, like, the thing God does is, like, make Moses' snake eats the other snakes. And then the Pharaoh's like, whoa, that was impressive. But I was like, why could if the Pharaohs aren't, like, don't have God on their side, how could they can make their staffs into snakes? And my dad had the good point. He was like, well, maybe that was just, like, a magician's trick you could do then was, like, make your staff, you know, you'd have a snake, sleight of hand, basically, with staffs and snakes. And like there wasn't magic involved in it. But clearly there's a medium who can conjure spirits in the Old Testament.
Well, yeah, and like the whole
point.
And
Samuel's like, why did you wake me up?
The whole point of like the New Testament is just like the Old Testament is like weird magical bullshit. And like you're allowed to do whatever the fuck you want. And like you'll be saved anyway because like Jesus Christ died for you to do whatever dumb bullshit you want to do. So like the Old Testament is more just like fun to read in the same way, but like any like old lit is fun to read.
It is really fun to read. Like that's one thing. It's like 2nd and 1st Samuel especially. Like I'm in 2nd Samuel now, but these like just reading all the stories of Saul and David, it's like it is fun to read. It's a good book.
I dated this guy for a while who was like, do you want to like read the Old Testament of the Bible to each other? It's like,
yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, totally.
Story time in a relationship with books.
Right up my alley or something. Like definitely. Like you know how to appeal to me. That's like totally my thing.
Yeah, if a girl was like, you want to read this book tonight together, it almost wouldn't matter to me what the book was. I would just say yes.
I know. I feel like the person that I've been like sort of seeing recently is like, I feel like this is like always the thing. Like somebody was like the last person that I like seriously dated was always just like, you think I'm a neck bearded mouth breather and like blah blah blah. Like, dude, here's the thing that you have to understand too is I think it's hot if people want to like read books to me or something, but like I also understand that like most people don't read. And like that's not necessarily something where I'm like, oh, that has like you can't even talk to people about books. It's like me and you, like we both read books or something, but it's like it's not easy to talk to people about books, even if they're smart, you know?
It's true. Like for example, my smartest friend, he doesn't read. Like he doesn't read books, but he's just like IQ wise, like clearly if you hang out with this guy, you'll know like this guy's really smart.
Yeah, it's like reading books, like even if you're really smart and that's like a thing that you share in common, like it's difficult. Like books are like a solitary interest.
It's like some people like books more than other people. It's just true. There are book people and they're not book people. I mean, and then there are ways in between, you know.
Even if it's like something you have in common, it's difficult to talk about. Like books are a hard thing to talk about, even if it's something you have in common with another person. And I feel like a lot of people are like, you feel like I'm a dumbass. And it's like, I don't think you're a dumbass. Like, I just think it's hard to talk about books with people. Like, I think everyone has different things that appeal to them.
Sure. Yeah, you're not going to have read the same books as most people, no matter what, just because they take a long time to read and you're going to follow your own interests.
Yeah, even if you read the exact same book, it's hard to talk about it.
Kind of. I don't know. Nobody reads the ones I read.
But anyway, did we talk about all of the Christian Slater things?
Yeah, I think we were caught up on that. Next episode, we will have our special host, Arkady Kremlinov. Arkady Kremlinov will be on to discuss The Name of the Rose.
I really look forward to that one because I really love Umberto Eco.
Did you read the book?
No, but like I've read a bunch of other Umberto Eco stuff. I have not read The Name of the Rose, but like I've read a bunch of his other stuff.
Oh, good.
So like I look forward to that one.